ANCAP perspective, it's very important that I highlight the dangers of collectivism and what socialism is. And to me, it's actually even more important that I show that the right wing is socialist too. And that socialism is the danger, that the collectivization of property, presumably for the little guy, is the danger. That the Fox Motor Company, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, is a disastrous and destructive and horrific evil. And that it doesn't matter whether or not it comes from people that are blue haired feminists or it comes from groypers. Socialism is
Thank
is
you, Kyle.
a disease and a danger. And when the right is so recalcitrant to name the Nazis as the socialists as they are, it becomes a problem for me. And it becomes even more of a problem when the left tries to deny this. Because this idea that fascism and socialism are these wildly different things, when you may be able to find some differences in the way that they play or some cultural differences, some small things. But at the end of the day, they have the same effects. They are the same governmental structure. It's the same slavery, and it's all of this presumably for the greater good that the worst evils are done. And that's why it's very important that we identify Nazism as socialism,
And
because
thank you for the gift
socialism
sub.
is evil.
I think it's a worthwhile question. I mean, for me, I guess my whole point in being here is to gain, viewers and exposure on Twitch. That's the point. No, really, but for real, like, I actually think
Really
that
have
this
less
is
than a socialist streamer.
it's a brain dead take. Honestly, it's a brain dead take for people who watch PragerU. And I get Fabian's point. I actually do from an ANCAP perspective. It's just my point is you have to be so far out on the fringe to come to that conclusion logically. You have to just say, well, then everything is socialism, right? And I think the average person hearing that is probably not swayed to think like even in your response, and not to get into a whole thing about this, but it's like you mentioned there's a distinction between left and right, and you think that they're both socialist. So I guess my view would be like, okay, on the
It is.
Fabian scale, this would have been not left socialist. This would have been right socialist, in distinction to the left socialism of like the Soviet Union.
Yeah, I am I'm very specific, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. That like when you have communist-based revolutions that are left-wing in cultural values, and you have fascist revolutions, they're both socialist. They're both economically they're as socialist as you can get. They're you can't even tell the difference between them, and they have the same stated goals. The difference is that more left-wing communist variants are more dysgenic and they destroy the family, and so it takes longer for a country to heal from communism, because communism is even worse than like the kind of what you might describe as reactionary fascist
Thank
things.
you,
Because
Samantha. I
and you can
appreciate it.
look at basically any formerly fascist versus any formerly communist country, and you can see the results, that fascism is a lot easier to heal from, because it's quite literally just less destructive than the communist variants, but they're all different variants of socialism.
I mean, I would argue that fascism was probably like the primary genesis point of the Second World War, which devastated Europe and killed millions and millions of people more than any other modern war. And it took, you know, billions of dollars of US taxpayer money and, various other things to even rebuild from fascism. It did more damage in a shorter period of time than maybe any other political movement in history. I'm like
Again,
kind of
you're
like
engaging with
astounded
my
by that.
point. You're
Real
engaging
quick,
you're
level three
engaging
hype
with the
train. Thank you
specific.
all for your generosity. It's truly appreciated. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Scott.
You're you're using the war as an example, because Germany and was the main pivotal point here in the war, which I don't think is really actually engaging with what I'm saying in terms of the dysgenic values that the culture and the society and the country itself has. Obviously, World War II was worse than fucking Cuba's revolution because it was isolated to Cuba. The other thing here too that I think is really problematic here is it's not like the Soviets didn't help invade fucking Poland, my guy. It's not like they didn't turn over 100 to 300,000 Jews to
Yeah,
the
but
Germans. Like
sure.
the Soviet
Well,
Union was as much responsible for that until the Germans
this
decided to fucking invade them.
The Soviets reached out to the British and the French prior to the war to try and make mutual security guarantees and stop Hitler from the start. And both the French and the British sent
They
diplomats
played
over
both
to the
sides,
Soviet
absolutely.
Union who were low ranking. And basically, the Soviets knew they wouldn't come to an agreement. So they kind of put Stalin in a position where he had to sign Molotov-Ribbentrop to have any chance of defending himself against an
He didn't have to
inevitable
fucking
German
engage in the
invasion.
Caton massacre in Poland, right? He didn't have to turn over
I'm
Jews.
not. I'm
The
not saying
idea that he
everything
had to
Stalin. No, no, no. You're
sign,
misunderstanding. I'm not saying everything
like, he
Stalin did
was.
is excusable. I'm not. I'm not. But what I'm saying is, in insofar as Stalin's contribution to the fact that World War II happened, I think Stalin was trying to do a lot to prevent World War II from happening. And the best case for that would be the country that suffered the most in World War II was the Soviet Union. I mean, the absolute annihilation of millions and millions of Russians, destruction of infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's not to excuse anything the Soviet Union did war crime wise or anything like that. But I think we could all agree, like, Nazi
My
Germany is
argument is this.
primarily responsible for World War II.
Right. My argument is very simple. When I'm talking about the difference between fascism and communism, and those different variants of socialism, as there are many variants of socialism and how they occur. My issue is that I stated this is what happens within the country. You bring up World War II as a means of, like, this is how destructive fascism really is. And what I'm saying is that they're not the only fucking players in the game of World War II. It's very possible that World War II might never have occurred if Stalin had put his fucking foot down and refused to engage in that treaty. We don't know. We can't play the historical game of whether or not that would have occurred. You could ask historians about political realism and why World War One and the Alsace-Lorraine and contribute. There are a lot of different reasons
I
why
see you,
World War
Lactoid.
II occurred. That isn't just magically fascism causes world wars. Like that's not actually engaging with what I said. Instead, it's more subversion from the guy that won't give a definition of socialism.
Okay, Lactoid wants to get in. I believe he will give and has given a definition. But go ahead, Lactoid.
Um, I wanted to go back to I, I guess non-smoker. I'll start with you. Did you ever answer when I asked if fascism, specifically in Germany, the rise of the Nazi Party, if this was in response to, like, if this was like a liberal response to socialism, why did they target the stock markets, close most of them, and by law limit dividends to 6% or less? Because that primarily hurt the uh, business owners, entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Changebox. So that was directed to non-smoker.
Oh, fuck. I'm sorry. I was
It's
talking to
okay.
my chat.
You're good.
Yeah,
I'll ask
can you
again.
ask me again?
No problem. If your statement, which I hear a lot from leftists, which is that Nazism, fascism in the German sense here, Nazism was the like a liberal response to socialism. Why did they target the stock markets, close most of them, and then by law limit the amount of dividends that could be distributed to 6% or less?
I don't think that the criteria
No,
for
thank you for the support.
the Nazis being anti-socialist is even necessarily how they handle the economy. I think that the criteria that I judge them on is how they treated the existing socialist movement. And that was throwing them into labor camps and fucking, turning many of the socialists, well, executing them, turning them into slave labor class, liquidating their movement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, banning their political parties, need I say more? So I'm not denying that there weren't aspects to Nazi Germany where, they tried to stop finance capital. And you're right, in a lot of Nazi Germany's critiques of capitalism were that it was a Jewish institution and that it was supported international Jewry and had to be severed for this, that, and the other reason. And I'm not even denying that Hitler, as posted in the article that Kai put in the chat, he privately admired Stalin's Soviet economy. I just don't think that all of those things add up to, well, Nazi Germany definitely was socialist. Again, and I know Fabian hates this, and look, I get it. It seems weaselly, but I guess I just think of things historically. My point is, when you try to, socialism is such a big term, right? That you have to try to identify like the context, right? What did it mean at a given place and time? So were the Nazis socialist by some very large definition of socialism? Yeah, I guess you could make that argument. My argument is that they were not socialist relative to German politics in the 1930s.
Can
So
you give a definition for socialism?
yeah, well, so the problem. Well, hold on, a couple of things. So you, I wasn't necessarily specifically going off because I'm obviously there's some disagreement even between me and Scott here, but what I asked you was when you said that fascism was a liberal response to socialism, the answer that you just gave was it's not necessarily about even the economic points. It has to do with how they treated the Socialist Party in Germany. So if we just take that answer, could this not just be a case of leftist infighting?
It's not a case of leftist infighting because of the reason that I keep making about the elections, right? The Nazis were sort of rolled themselves into the German conservative movement, right? And so they took the support of the left wing movements in terms of winning over the people, and also absorbed the right wing political factions and formed themselves in contradistinction to the left wing movements. And then went about, banning them and arresting them and imprisoning them and all that stuff. I don't like that argument about left-wing infighting because what it implies is that, well, all of these political parties were left-wing. Well, then why would they exist in opposition to each other? Right? There would be no need for that. If they all were left-wing, they all had the exact same goals for Germany, they would have been one united party. Right? They
Well,
formed in distinct.
Let's imagine instead of the Nazi Party, it was like, let's say they named themselves Socialist Party Number Two, and they were also socialist, but they were slightly less socialist. And then they got into power and they demonized and prosecuted all like the more socialist people. Because they did that, are they now right wingers? Because on the Overton window of Germany, they are to the right of this socialist party.
I think if you said that they absorbed the right wing movement and then did everything in their power to stop the other left wing movements, that by definition, by the criteria I've stated, yeah, they would be a right wing movement.
But wouldn't any less socialist movement absorb the right wing elements of the country if they wanted to win political power and still be a
Yeah, that's
socialist
why
party?
all liberals are Nazis.
Okay, so I'm dealing with one person who says everyone's a socialist. I'm dealing with you who's saying that all liberals are not. Like,
It's like give definitions.
Yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about. There's nothing of substance. That's been my issue this whole time with Heisenberg's definitions and like debate style here. Like he's been over here sitting here going like
Oh,
with
it was
like.
funny.
No, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. No, like
It
there's
was a
been no
joke.
substance. It's literally been like just straight like questions, no answer. Then when he has talked about history, it's glossed over things like, oh, the gulags aren't as bad as the Holocaust. Well, when the gulags killed like 30 to 50 million people, oh, because they're not
What?
leftist.
Where are you getting that number from?
Like some crazy numbers. They killed lots of people.
We're
Or the great,
30 to
or, like,
50 million people?
or Mao.
Can I
Mao
get a
is
source
not
on that?
Yeah, we'll go look it up in a second.
30 to
Whatever.
50 million people?
Regardless, they killed a fuck ton of people in the gulags. All
Oh,
right.
no, it might be 30 million or it might be a
All
couple
right, we'll
thousand.
look
I
it up.
don't
We'll
know.
look it up in a
What
second.
difference does it make? Give me the numbers now.
I'm sure somebody
If you
can
don't
back
have the numbers, you're wrong. Shut up.
the point is that like we're sitting here talking. We were just bitching about how numbers didn't matter earlier, and now we're sitting here crying about I might have spoke on the specific millions. There's a lot of people that died in the
Dude,
Gulag.
you're grossly
It
overstating the
wasn't even
number
the
to a
millions. It was
ridiculous
in the like.
extent.
When we talk
Secondly,
about the USSR, it was in the 100,000s.
Yeah, you're nowhere near the number, dude.
all right. Secondly,
He's bring up estimates of deaths in the Soviet Union as a whole.
yeah, that's
Right.
yeah,
But he's saying that's because of
The
gulags,
Holodomor.
and he's trying to attack
okay.
me.
The
He's trying to
point
do
that
a
I'm
gotcha on
making is
me.
that the point that I'm making is sitting here and trying to like pigeonhole authoritarianism and like the right wing racism, like the racism is right wing issues, right? And that's just not unequivocally not true.
I mean, yeah,
We can look at.
leftists are racist.
I know. That's what I'm saying. But that seems to be the thing that they keep bringing up here. They're saying because of this, then they're actually right wings. So like it's everything they're saying has no actual substance and there's no actual like validity. And when they bring up like other countries and they say, oh, well, they just hand wave those and say those don't count under their bullshit definition that they have or their amorphous definition that they don't want to give because they don't like definitions.
can I ask? I guess for Gibbs and Scott, what's your definition of left wing that you're using here?
So I would I would consider left wing to be the antithesis of right wing, and I would define right wing
What?
much the same way. Hold on, no. Hear me out. I know it's a negation. I would say it's a negation of right wing, and right wing I would consider to be much the way the distributist puts it in the in his 9 factor definition. So familial, about the entropy of systems, a desire for order, an importance of family structure, etc. So like it would be a much longer conversation, which is why I really want to avoid definitions that use left wing or right wing when talking about socialism, because I think those are even harder to define for most people than socialism itself. But just another quote I wanted to throw out because I thought it'd be fun while we're talking while we're talking about definitions, etc. So from Marx's German ideology, 1845, communism is for us not a state of affairs which is to be established, an ideal to which reality have to adjust itself. We call communism the real movement which abolishes the present state of things. The conditions of this movement result from the premises now in existence. This is the kind of shit you get when you try and get Marxists to define socialism or communism or anything. These like vague, open-ended kind of like a process of history of capitalism defeating itself into the next stages. And I just don't understand how Marxists can believe shit like this and then magically pretend that Nazism isn't socialism when it absolutely fits all of those processes because there were other socialists that they killed, as if that didn't happen in every other socialist revolution. It's insane.
Do you know of like a socialist country where they persecuted other socialists to the extent that Nazi Germany did?
Why are we saying to the extent that
Didn't
Nazi
Stalin like
Germany-
remove
It's
people from
pretty
photographs?
significant. Yeah, okay, to the extent that Nazi Germany did, meaning like banning all of these parties and throwing masses of the population in jail.
Anybody who was a
I mean,
Trotskyist?
I don't
hold on,
think
no,
to scale it compares, right? And the reason that's significant is because the point I'm trying to make is that was an effort by the Nazis to completely eliminate any sort of progressive movement in German politics and consolidate control around this, authoritarian, right-wing, backward-moving sort of political trajectory.
This
No,
doesn't
smoker buddy,
deal
that's
with
not the
whether or
best.
not
That's not the best
Nazis were
example
socialists,
because,
right?
or like
This
best
is
question
like
because like you got to remember
the
that Lenin
USSR
also
persecuted plenty.
killed all of the anarchists. Lenin also killed all of the anarchists, like because they were his main competitions. Like that's not the
Hitler was
greatest.
an anarchist.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, Franklin.
Yeah,
Do you
I
say he
wanted to-
was an anarchist?
Yes.
I wanted to
Now you're just being
respond.
silly and
German
trolling
sociology.
because you can't.
Hey, can you guys let Fairy Queen talk?
Can you let Fairy Queen
Please?
talk? Let Fairy Queen talk. Thank you.
So, smoker, don't hold. I can't like generate an immediate historical example for you, so I don't know. Like the answer, my intuition tells me that that's not true. Like as Laxoid mentioned Trotsky, like Vigilante mentioned Lenin, but I think it's reasonable, right? Like it's not unheard of. Like when there is a revolutionary movement that happens within a country, and then that movement, whatever side of the political spectrum it happens to be, takes power. Immediately there is an execution, and people are often purged out so that like the new like regime, I mean the French Revolution is an example of this, right? Like directly after Robespierre took power, he immediately people were thrown in jail, they were executed, they were tortured and killed as a way to try to maintain power over France. And so
It's in the Paris International, yeah.
I don't think it's and so I agree with you, and it is certainly true that like the Nazis did execute socialists. They burned books. They threw socialists. All of those things are true, but I don't think that that necessarily is a point that proves that not that therefore National Socialism was not socialism. Instead, I think that that simply speaks to the reality of what happens when there is an insurgent political movement that takes control of a country and then wants to maintain power and control over that piece of land. I don't think that's does that seem an unreasonable thing to say? Like I wouldn't say that for
No.
yeah.
I wouldn't say that's unreasonable. No, I guess, okay, let me make a clearer distinction here. So, like Trotsky, right? A lot of people like to talk about Trotsky. Trotsky was part of, and the Trotskyists were part of the original Bolshevik takeover of Russia, right? The left wing in Germany was not part of the Nazi takeover of German parliament, right? That's the difference. Okay, so what you saw in the Soviet Union was a very aggressive and, let's call it like a, evil in some sense, consolidation of power in the party around one individual, i.e., Stalin, right? Which eliminated all opposition, to his hard line of thinking, right? Hard line basis of Soviet communism. But the difference with Nazi Germany is that the Nazis formed in distinction to the socialist movement, which existed in Germany, and then did everything in its power once they came to power to eliminate it completely as a political force. That's the difference.
It's a complete non-argument because, like, it's not like the Mensheviks weren't fucking pushed out. They were a left-wing fucking political branch of Marxist-Leninists that were there fighting, and they had to be removed. And many of
The
them were
Mensheviks were
assassinated.
I
Marxist-Leninists,
believe Fairy Queen has a follow-up.
Mensheviks were the anarchists that I just mentioned.
They were part of the Leninist coalition, or they were not.
I'm
Was that
pretty
not
sure there
what-
was a
was it-
distinction between the Leninists and the Mensheviks, dude. I'm pretty sure they were not
Yes, there's a
one and the same
distinction.
entity. That's
Absolutely,
kind of
I
why
agree.
they
There
existed
are
as a
different
separate thing.
leftist, right? There's different leftist individuals and groups, and when one gains more power, they push out, possibly kill, possibly assassinate, or possibly exile those groups. This is a non-argument about whether or not Germany was a socialist movement. Your argument thus far boils down to because they persecuted leftists and socialists. And then we say, well, look at how the Soviet Union did the same thing. And now you're like, oh, but that's not quite the same thing because the numbers are different, or because it was a unique perspective of Germany because they were allied against this as like part of their propaganda. It's just moving goalposts from someone that won't fucking give a definition of socialism because you can't, and because you know that it
I
would
see, Fairy Queen.
require that you have to bring the Soviet Union and Germany together, or you have to say that neither of them are them.
So Fairy Queen, then Scott.
Well,
Lactoid,
you mean?
I'm sorry, Lactoid.
Non-smoker. So I hear you, and I would agree with you that I think that it's true that like the National Socialist movement, like it relied and it depended upon the Conservative Party in order to maintain power. I don't think it would be appropriate to describe it as a left-wing movement. That's not what I don't think that that's true. But what
Why?
I would
Why not?
because
Yeah, well,
like
why
the
wouldn't
left,
it be?
I mean, they were eugenicists. They did the first trans
Well,
surgery, right? Like they definitely
oh,
certainly had progressive elements to them.
my
Pro-abortion?
understanding.
They're
go
pro-abortion.
ahead and let her respond.
So my understand so for a couple of reasons, like one of them is like so if we're thinking about liberalism, if we're thinking about what leftism is, the purpose of it, as I understand it, is to I mean it's literally like within this within like the line of the unicorn as I just read. Like the purpose of it is to defeat the idea of inequality, right? The purpose of socialism, like from a left-wing perspective, is to take the equality of human rights for granted, which Nazism does not do. It celebrates, the inequality that exists, and doesn't deny it, and even tries to exacerbate it in this instance. But you can yell at me about that later, Scott. I'm trying to talk to non-smoker, but non-smoker, the issue that I'm having with that, even though I would agree with you, I don't think that it was a left-wing movement. I don't know if why that would mean that it wasn't a socialist movement. I've mentioned this like a couple of times that I think it's possible to be somebody who is a conservative, to have a conservative mindset and even conservative policies that you might want to implement, but you might still want to be a socialist. You might still believe in the idea that that people should be able to jointly use, share, and receive the benefits from collectively like owned resources. I know we're using like conservative and liberal because we're in the 21st century and like this is why it comes up constantly. But I don't know that socialist necessarily means leftist, right? Just like I don't think that postmodernist just means like liberal or leftist, right? I think you could probably find some conservative postmodernists, just like I think you could probably find some conservatively minded socialists. So,
1 second. So unfortunately, non-smoker non-smoker has to leave. So if he has any last statement or last shout out, go ahead and.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I could respond to that quick and would love to have a discussion with any of you guys about any of this stuff. except that one person. But yeah, just real quick. I mean, I would say that my answer to that is that generally speaking, socialism is always left wing. It's always progressive, right? And left wing is essentially, when it comes down to definitions in the way we develop these terms, it's the progressive faction. It's the faction that wants the most amount of radical change, right? And those are the socialists. Socialism, as understood by Marx, it's a development in the mode of production. It's the forward movement of history, right? It's the next phase in human development. So it's always left wing. The right wingers are trying to move in the opposite direction, right? They're either trying to create this stagnation of maintaining the current order of things as they are, or move backward, right? In the case of monarchists and groups like that. So that's my short answer. Good talking to everyone, right? Nice time. Please, anybody, if you'd like to follow me, twitch.tv/nonsmoker. And the rest of you guys have a great night, all right?
Peace out. Thanks again for coming through.
Yep. Thank you,
bud.
Smoker.
Can we go to
Man.
I wanted
a
What were you saying?
strong, can we just go to closing? Because I don't think there's a strong opponent against kind of a block here now of the Nazis were socialists.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now that Ajax is gone, like I think we're gonna be okay. I don't think without Huey Long, we struggle.
I gotta
Like,
correct.
I got
TED talk.
I gotta correct.
Yeah.
I gotta correct
Go
something
ahead,
that was
Lactoid.
wrong that was said. Otherwise, I'm gonna have a fucking aneurysm. So it's just like a brain thing I have. I'm sorry. Non-smoker had said, and he can't rebut this because he left, but that's his fault. That the left-wing element of the Nazi Party was not responsible for the Nazi takeover of Parliament, and the timeline there is just absolutely wrong. So it was in January of 1933 that Hitler took power. The Enabling Act, which essentially turned the Parliament into a rubber stamp for Hitler, was in 1933, and then the Night of the Long Knives was in 1934. The 1934 Night of the Long Knives is when the left-wing elements, such as the Strasserists or Strasser was killed, but then also the other elements, including Gottfried Feder, were removed from power, the more anti-capitalist left wing. So the rise of power of Hitler was undoubtedly strongly supported by the left-wing factions of the Nazi Party. So I think that actually makes it a lot more comparable to the Trotskyists at that point, right? Because they were involved in the Bolshevik takeover of Tsarist Russia in the same way that the anti-capitalists were involved in Hitler's takeover of the parliament in Germany. Just when you look at the timeline, it's very clear. So,
Thank you, Lactoid. Vigilante, anything?
No.
Cool. So I guess with that, we will head to open. Or unless Gibbs, you have.
Well, if we're closing, yeah, I mean, I don't have anything specific. I think that we all summed up most of it. I will be here. I'm gonna mute myself for a moment, but I'll be here and open again in a minute.
Oh, you're opening up to like your chat or whatever? Is that what's happening?
Well, I was going to say, just might as well head to open panel. If anybody has any points they want to bring into the conversation, it'll allow them to do so. But all the same, it seems we've reached the main end of where we were getting to.
Yeah, I tend not to do just a lot of open panel stuff because when
I
I'm
get that.
streaming, at least, because I can never tell like who might just come on and start screaming the N word or something.
Yeah,
Because
no, I get that.
so if it's okay if I do a closing and hop out of here.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, I'm Fabian Liberty, anarcho-capitalist, libertarian. Come check me out if you want to talk about libertarian philosophy. It's from the nerdiest of nerdy, like Hoppian argumentation ethics, down to economics and stuff like that, or whatever it is. So I think we had a fun little debate here. I think I remain unconvinced in any way, shape, or form that the Nazis weren't socialists. I think historically it's very obvious that they're socialists. I think most economists agree. You asked earlier, were there any people at the time that would say that it was socialist? Of course, there are people that are going to say that it is and it isn't. One of my favorite books on this topic that I think everyone should read is Gunter Riemann's Vampire Economy. He's a Marxist economist that wrote in 1939 about why the Germans and the National Socialists were um, completely exactly the same as the Soviet. all of the problems that exist in the Soviet Union exist in Russia, in Germany, that the economic situation is exactly the same, and that privatization is a lie. That ultimately, the idea of privatization was used as a means of escaping liberalization of the economy. They put it in their friends' hands. They massively regulated it. They controlled price. They controlled what they could invest in. They controlled dividends. They controlled the stock market. They controlled what you could produce. They controlled how much you could produce. And the fact that some industrialists, gave money to them, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of their money came from workers. The facts that tax revenue grew from 32 and 33 and 37 to 38, 1,365% from corporate tax, but actual corporate revenue only grew 110%. The fact that they had the largest union ever, the fact that the Reichstag fire decree got rid of private property rights completely, the fact that that was their entire spiel was for the worker, the fact that Nazi Germany reorganized industry into 13 groups with separate subgroups so that they could control every single solitary portion of the economy really shows that they basically nationalized the economy for the worker. They had progressive elements that they adopted from previous administrations and in their culture. And so what we see is a somewhat left wing, somewhat right wing, completely socialist party that took over. And instead of being honest about this, Marxists have to lie over and over and over again to try and make it seem like the far right and the right wing are this capitalist, private property loving right wing people when they just aren't. So again, Fabian Liberty, find me wherever you want, and I'll wait in case there's any other closing statements before I dip out.
Thank you, Scott, and I'm very glad you came on today. Glad having you here for the first time.
Appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, Fairy Queen?
Hi guys. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me at Fairy Queen's Cottage on YouTube and at fairy_queen on Twitter. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Fairy Queen. Lactoid.
Yeah, so although I will posit that Nazi Germany was, I think, incredibly anti-libertarian, as I think everybody agreed on the panel. They're absolutely anti,
Oh yeah.
hopefully, any anti-free market even. I would go as far as say that maybe I'll get a little bit more pushback there from the left-wingers. But I think that's pretty clear. I think when it comes to defining whether or not it's socialist, it's tough. I do think it's tough, and I do think that defining it in of itself is probably just a better way, right? I think it categories exist for a reason. They exist in order to help us define differences that are notable, obviously. And I think that Nazi Germany and fascism generally is different enough to warrant its own category. You can say perhaps it's more related to socialism than free market capitalism. It definitely pulls elements from it, but I'm skeptical to say it is socialism, right? I think that the key difference that I'm really looking at is I define left wing pretty simply. Left wing generally is just a dissatisfaction with structured hierarchy, and right wing is a satisfaction with some kind of structured hierarchy, whatever that may be. And so I think that when you look at the shift from Tsarist Russia to the Soviet Union, you do see, I think, what is markedly a left wing movement, right? A shift away from a incredibly hierarchical power structure of the Tsar ruling over everything. I don't think the Tsar was socialist, even though he dictated economic policy for everybody. I think that there was, that's monarchy. I think which probably is Nazi party's closer to than anything else. But I think with Nazi Germany, when you are moving from the Weimar Republic being relatively left, and the Nazi Party being just this weird amalgamation of everything bad at once, and coming into power for the sole purpose of perpetuating itself, for consuming power into the party, destroying the free market elements, destroying perhaps even the Marxist elements of the party, simply to push the wheels of history, as it would define, and conquer various lands. Its economic system was intentionally built to reimburse itself off the conquering of new lands. In fact, there was meetings between Hitler and top officials, which they literally planned for that in their budgetary models, where they could only actually sustain their budgets if they conquered new lands. So everything was geared towards that. So I do think it's a little bit more complicated. I think third way defining it as a third way movement makes the most sense. Yeah, you can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube.
Epic as always. Thank you. Vigilante, any closing statements?
I mean, like, I still would say, like, depending on which version of the political spectrum we're going off of, Nazism isn't really left wing or right wing. I would say, like, if anything, it's probably center right if we're going off the quadrant political spectrum. Because economically speaking, it is pretty much centrist, but at the same time, it's like authoritarianly speaking, it's obviously at the very fucking top. So I mean, I would say it'd probably be like if my screen was like it'd be like right here, like top center right. Like it's not really left wing or right wing.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And we welcome Tiberius to the room as we head to open. And I thank you all. If anybody needs a dip, great having you and have a great evening. Do you have any thoughts on this topic, Tiberius?
I majored in political science. Of course I do.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the technical answer to this is that not fascism and Nazism, or excuse me, Nazism is an offshoot of fascism. Fascism is an offshoot of syndicalism, and syndicalism is an offshoot of communism. It's actually it's kind of parallel to Bolshevism in some particular ways, but that's a whole other conversation.
Progressively more right wing as it.
So yeah, it did. So here's the weird part. Don't look at this as a bar of like a spectrum, because they'll be like, oh, left wing over here, right wing over here. Think of this as a circle, where you have like the bottom left is where you get like authoritarian communism, or authoritarian socialism is actually probably the technical term for the Reds, and then the Nazis are like the bottom right. It's hilarious that if you actually compare the Nazis and the Reds together, they work in a very, very similar way, just for a different moral and ethical end. It's literally what happens when both sides of the political aisle just break their own morals, and then you see how horrible they can get. Are they technically socialist? No, by the means of what the left actually portrays it to be, and I think there's actually a legitimate point to be made there. But if you will, this is what right-wing socialism would be, is that what they do is they say, hey, look, Hitler actually said it exactly in this way. We don't socialize the market. We don't socialize the workplace. We socialize the workers. Here we go. Like Hitler believed that. Even Mussolini believed this. What the hell's his name? Franco believed in a lot of this. Is that the economy serves a socially conservative end, not the other way around. So the ethics are different, but the behavior is actually really similar to the Reds.
I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Is like, you actually, because I brought up we did our openings that Nazism is an offshoot of Mussolini's fascism, which came from Sorelianism, which is syndicalism, and it's basically, and Sorelianism is basically just Marxism, but taking away literally all of the core elements of Marxism. Which, when you take away the core elements of Marxism, like getting rid of private property and all that stuff, what you're pretty much left with is social democracy.
They try to drop the economic authoritarianism for a social authoritarianism. It literally is kind of the thing that you consistently see the difference between right-wingers and left-wingers. The left largely wants to make a society that is equitable and fair through an economic lens. They want to control the economy to make offsets for people's general well-being. The right wants to do that in a social way. They want to tell you how to live your life, how to be ethical and how to be moral, because if they believe that people are made up of a morally coherent body politic, you don't have to worry about administering the economy because everyone will be a fair and decent actor. Both of these are very utopian, but in a way they have a point. So I'll just dissect it from there.
And you're right. For the most part, like we want to give everybody social freedom. The right wants to give everybody economic freedom.
Because if you look at how it goes, it's the opposite, right? The right cares about social mores. They think that if you have a socially, morally coherent society, you're good to go. The economy will fall in line. The left feels almost the exact opposite way, and I wish it wasn't this cookie cutter, but it tends to be exactly this. The left feels like if you actually make sure that people have a pot to piss in, metaphorically speaking, that they will become moral, rational actors. It's quite an interesting diaspora to deal with.
One thing I wanted to ask on the panel: do we? Before non-smoker left, he said that it's not necessarily about like the economic system, but about the political power relations to the Socialist Party of Germany. Like my perception is that defining whether or not this is socialist or not really does require us looking at the economic model, right? To me, what is socialism is like socialism is an economic question, not really like a political question. I mean, do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
No, I don't, because they're one and the same.
It's both. Yeah, it's both. But you have to factor in economics.
Okay, so here's the argument to why there's a lot of people who will say that the Soviet Union wasn't real communism or wasn't real socialism, and they can bite me. The reason why that the Bolsheviks even said it that it was is that the Bolsheviks were made up of the Soviets. The Soviets were like the worker councils made up of each individual, factory administration, what have you. And that basically those who did work were the ones who actually owned the political apparatus. That part was actually true. The problem is that it became one of the most authoritarian hellscapes in the world because they literally believed that price was not a good economic means for distributing goods.
No. You can have authoritarian socialism, but like in my mind, like the thing that makes it socialism is that it's going to be the economic model, right? Where because I mean I could have like a right-wing monarchy, and then I could just name it socialism. That doesn't make it socialism if the economic model doesn't fit. To me, it's an economic model.
Economic model. When we talk about the economic model of of the type of fascism that we're talking about, not more like modern fascism. It'd be closer to social democracy than socialism.
So
I would go the other way with this. But
I want to jump in here because I kind of want to disagree kind of with maybe we're like two heads of the same coin, but we're flipping it on this one type of thing. It's like so. Sure. I'm looking at it right here, and I'm looking at when I look to the Nazi Party, I look at the stuff they put in power, put in place. I looked at like the early party, and I see there is a difference between the early party and the late party, right? But there is one main person that I think carries over, and that's Goebbels, right? And to me, Goebbels and Strasser at the very beginning of the career, basically they both said, this is a quote from a thing of Strasser says, talking to Goebbels at something, I don't know, but it says, "We are socialists, we are enemies, deadly enemies of today's capitalist economic system with its exploitation of economically weak, its unfair wage system, it's a moral way of judging the worth of the human being in terms of their wealth and their money instead of responsibility and performance. We're destroying the system. We were determined to destroy the system, but whatever happens." So yeah, you mentioned the wage thing, but they like cap the wage, right? And they kind of like it seems like this is one of those I can't even talk transitory states between like where they can get from one point to another. So whenever you're saying they're like authoritarian and they're too far right, to me it just seems like this is the stage of socialism where they're before they could get to that enlightened utopia kind of thing. That's kind of what they're like. What it seems like at least Goebbels truly believed that, and he's probably number 3 in the party, and he wrote most of their economic and political philosophy.
Okay, two sides of this. Number one, I'm always a little bit wary of the mouthpieces, right? Like, let's be real. Goebbels was a propagandist, and he literally believed that just tell a lie often enough and consistently enough, and people will believe it. While he was true in that, it doesn't mean that factually he's correct. Okay, so let's hit a few things here. The reason why I will accept that the Soviet Union was a socialist country is because, at least by its own political structure, the workers do actually own the system. They are literally the body politic. They are the ones who are supposed to elect the Soviets to actually represent them and go about what they're doing. Structurally, it should be. Nazi Germany is not. While they will say that they're hyper anti-capitalist, which does not equal socialism, by the way, I do believe there's a difference. Two sides of this. Number one, they will absolutely work with corporate interest and capital interest to get what they want. This is why they work with Krupp. This is where they work with Messerschmitt and Heinkel. And they even worked with GM there for a while. I've seen some of the Nazi promo banners for that shit. IBM, a number of other companies worked with the Nazis. They weren't
with Ford too.
Yeah, so they weren't anti-corporate in the same way that the Reds were, or that pretty much any of the socialists are. But more importantly is that the means of the workers actually politically influencing the Nazis actually pretty much inverts as soon as it gets political power at all. It's a very hierarchical state that is not run by workers, but run by bureaucrats. It's an incredibly complicated and hierarchical system, and you have to basically check off all the boxes to make sure that you can do any kind of business. It's definitely not socialist. It's definitely not capitalist. Like, I think when I came in, Lactoid was saying that's kind of a third way option. Economically speaking, the answer is kind of yes. But it's absolutely horrible. I would definitely not recommend anyone taking this economic model.
Or the social model too. That one's not so good either. I think we all agree.
No, McStarving's always fun. Economics is hard. I wish it was one of those things that was just like, hey, look, do X, Y, and Z and you're good. But it's very clear that there are some things you absolutely want to have largely privatized, and there's a few things that you definitely want to use the means of the state in some sort of capacity. I'm sure me and Lactoid will fight on this all the live long day, but this is why I love you, buddy.
Conversations trying to figure out that middle ground, figure out like what needs to be privatized, what needs to be state controlled. It's a lot easy. It's hard, but it's fun.
I'll put it this way: like, I don't think the vast majority of things even need to be state controlled, but you need to have like some kind of level of like cooperative common interest, right? The way we did health insurance versus the way we do it now was better then, because they were just nonprofit NGO organizations that would work and then to do the social means that you needed to do, while also not being, actually administered by the state to do anything, or while also trying to not make profit. It would be one thing if insurance was something that was incredibly revolutionary, right? Constantly popping up new ideas and new innovations. It doesn't. It's literally just being an actuary. It's risk management. Like, all insurances are literally top tier things that I think need to be like socialized or cooperatively run, because the entire point is risk pooling and risk sharing. I'm sorry, Lactoid. I'll let you kill me here in a second. Like, dude, like, get rid of the food stamps, get rid of Social Security, get rid of 90% of this shit. Like, insurance is literally top tier number one thing that you should fucking like have on the deck by the way that it operates. The entire reason it works is pooling as many people as possible into a collective risk pool, and then using the law of large numbers just to understand, okay, we know that we're going to have to make X amount of payments literally by week or by month, because we know X amount of people are going to get hurt this week, or, injured or die, or whatever the fuck it is.
So insurance is the most regulated industry I can think of. It's probably even more regulated than the pharmaceutical industry within the United States. It's the only industry I can think of. You could probably give me a different example, but the only industry I can think of where your state insurance commissioner, who's a state official, gets to determine what the product is. They determine the standard policies. They get to determine what premiums you can charge. The state literally dictates what you can charge. And they also enforce bad faith claims. So they make the insurance company pay in certain circumstances, right? So, I mean, it's private.
It rivals the Department of Energy. That's only like two other things that are on this level of being involved. The Department of Energy is pretty much there, like just how you guys get power and turn your lights on. The other one is kind of related to that. It's controlled
yeah, but you're talking about public
dangerous substance.
Yeah, you're talking about like public utilities now, and you're comparing insurance to that. I mean, clearly insurance is like, if you're talking about like some kind of social good, or like there needs to be some kind of organization for the social good. And I mean, I don't even agree with that, but insurance clearly has met that standard based on just the amount of regulation that's on the insurance industry.
I'm not going to complain. Okay, so insurance, by its nature and by the way that we do it, should be largely a socially focused aspect, not an economic one, because the entire point of it is literally foundationally economic, and we're just trying to deal with the social ramifications of if insurance would fail, right? If you lose your house, forget all the economic effects that could come from that. What does that do you socially? you're now a toxic actor within the system because everyone now has to take care of you or to like either bear your burdens or that you are now a delinquent. We don't want that. That's why insurance is wonderful because not only does it economically take care of you, it takes care of you in a social manner too. The reason that we pull it all together is because you can't save up enough in case a tornado takes out your house. But all of us together chipping in like 2%, yeah, we totally can afford that.
Yeah, well, hold on there. Fuck all that. I don't want to chip in on that. I can afford my own house if it gets torn down and rebuilt, or pay for the interest.
Sure?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, this is what it comes back to. This is what you and I disagreed on. This why should one penny, one red cent of mine?
The fact that I have a heart and you don't want to because
I don't have a heart.
Let me give you a quote unquote third way. Okay.
Don't like the idea of helping people.
No, I like the idea of helping people. I like private.
No, you don't.
No, hold on.
Right now,
you don't. Wait. You like the idea of helping people with other people's money? I want to make that. That's actually
all of our money. The government made it.
All of our money, especially theirs over there. And then we help everybody with that money over there. Yeah.
So like, here's
what did you do, Todd?
Yeah. See, here's what.
I didn't do it.
It was me.
You let Razor on. Don't blame me for you. You did this.
No. So here's my issue, right? I'm gonna sum up kind of what Lactoid is saying, right? Well, maybe not Lactoid, but like what he kind of alluded to, and I'm gonna go further. I basically want private people to like help other people. If I choose to go give my money to the hobo, that was me choosing to give them some money so he can go get some crack. That was of my own volition. I don't want the government to come take my money and go give it to the hobo.
And then give him crack.
Then after I just worked 120 hours a week, and then they give them crack, and then give them $20 to go buy more crack. I work like 80 hours. But either way, we gotta. Yeah,
you think we need to socialize cocaine?
It depends how you build those hours. All right. The point that I'm making. Well, hold on. Now might be some socializing.
Now we know why he looks like a Cuban drug lord. Okay, it's the cocaine. It's the white powder.
That's neither here nor there. Either way, I'd be working a lot, right? I'm much more okay with me taking my money and choosing to give it to somebody versus the government holding a gun to my head and saying, "Hey, you got to work for, you got to give your money to crackhead Tom over here and let him fucking go to work for, because he didn't work so many hours or he only worked 32 hours this week and can't afford food."
Can I split? Look, I want to split hairs. Okay, so I get this, right? There's a level where I like liberalism because it's a largely voluntary system and it says, hey, look, like bring what you can bring to the party. I'm cool if most of us poor folks and middle class folks get together, make our, nonprofits or whatever else we do that can run insurance for us so that, because Gibbs kid over here can actually buy off the things that he needs to because he's just loaded in cash. I'm happy for you, dude. I'm not. I need to work with my fellow citizens and like economic actors to cover my fucking ass. We can. Fine. Okay. Cool. No. Good. You know what? Fine. I'm not a Giga Chad.
I like the idea of helping people.
No, I'll fucking bite this bullet. I'm not a Giga Chad. Look, I might be an electrician. Yeah, I might have the Mustang in my own house, but I'm not that fucking awesome. Okay. You are. More power to you. Do your own fucking thing, dude. Just stay the fuck out of my way because look, I want to be able to get together with my compatriots because I know Lactoid, even with that lawyer money, still wants some security.
No, I'm not. No. I'm not your compatriot here.
Okay, fine. Dude, I thought
coming after my dollars.
Are you a human who need health care?
I don't have to do it with a vote.
Patriot. That's how I feel. If you're a human,
I pay for my health care.
I my health care as well.
There's a chance you lose it.
Look,
and guess what? There's a chance that I go buy some more. Like, I mean, that's exactly what's
there's a chance you lose that.
Like, it'll be all right.
I'm not. God damn it! I'm not going on this. Look, I don't need to do this, and I don't need the government to run this. Quite frankly, like I'm cool if we privatize Social Security. Like it's a fucking nightmare. On the other side of this, though, let's be real here. Is that I still need to be able to collectively pull my risk, and I want to be able to do that at least in a private manner. The only issue I have with health insurance companies is twofold. One, on the private side, is that it can't cross 50 states. The risk pool analysis of like just changing that alone would be huge because even though you have United Healthcare, it's United Healthcare Indiana, United Healthcare Alabama, and you have, on our side, smaller government, fixed tort reform, We need the federal government to say, hey, look, this is what you can go after health and health insurance companies for. I know it sucks because it's the federal overreach, but we need those common guidelines so we can have health insurance that actually extends to all 50 states instead of just limited target pool, limited target pool, limited target pool. Fix both sides of that, we're good to go.
Both of those are good proposals, by the way. I've got no issue with either of those proposals. Like, tort reform is needed, and then it's state restrictions that prevent insurance from operating across state lines. So, I mean, obviously, I'd be opposed
I feel like
to
I
that.
know what it is, but just both for audience and me, could you explain tort reform real quick?
Yeah, so generally in the United States context, when we talk about tort reform, what it is putting statutory restrictions on what on civil lawsuits. So specifically torts. So for example, like an example of tort reform would be if a doctor fucks up on me and like causes injury. Tort reform in my state, for example, would say, okay, the max amount of money that you can recover from that doctor is $250,000 for non-economic damages, and then you're capped at that amount.
So you're saying we want to remove that cap, or like make the cap
even more stringent, right? Because what happens is without tort reform, you get circumstances where juries will award crazy fucking verdicts, just absolutely like economically devastating verdicts against companies, and cause them to raise their prices, cause them to go bankrupt, cause them to avoid payment. I mean, there's all sorts of negative externalities that come from that.
Well,
okay, I can say I probably could agree. I probably am on your side then.
I usually would never side with this on its face, because it basically would give a massive security blanket to corporations, which I don't like that idea. But here's the other side of this conversation. The problem that we are using the system for right now in a civil sense is that we're using it civilly to penalize people. I will give you the shiniest example of this, but it's still bullshit, and that's Alex Jones. Like, the reason why he gets nailed for this amount of money is because without tort reform, there's no cap on how much a jury can award. And while I absolutely agree with what they did, they shouldn't have that ability.
I'm pretty sure he was
well,
I'm pretty sure that was based off of how much money he made off of his shit.
Considering the amount of people it affected, that amount actually may have actually been
affected. All right. Anyway,
like,
we can. I'm not going to argue that. I have something else I want to talk about.
It's a different ethical conversation together.
I want to talk about something that just happened in this conversation, which is a little bit earlier. The point that I saw in the chat, and I think a few people here took this kind of standpoint, that my lactoid position was basically selfish, and I would argue, we are not the selfish ones here. Let me tell you who's selfish. The one that doesn't want to work more than 32 hours a week, that thinks they deserve my fucking money because after I work, and I should just be like, oh, you've worked all this, you've done all this extra.
It's for you too, buddy. We're not just saying
no. What am I getting out of this? I'm getting fucking diddly bupkis.
You get the same amount of money.
I don't want that shit. That sounds terrible. Why don't you just work more hours?
You don't want more free time? What kind of retard are you?
I'm just tired of this like limp dick baby.
You're a workaholic. Not everyone is a workaholic. Not everyone has the ability to work this amount.
I think you need therapy.
I'm just saying.
If you don't want more free time, Gibbs, I think you need therapy.
But here's the argument I'm making.
I want to let Lactoid get in. I say something out.
Yeah, go ahead, Gibbs. You finish up.
I'm almost done. Yeah, this argument I'm making though is, it seems to me what's selfish is for someone to come and hold a gun to my head, say you have to pitch in on all these programs. They're going to go to all these people that don't want to work as hard as you, and then want to say, oh, you're a workaholic, oh, you're this, you're that. And to me, that sounds very selfish, because I'm like, well, maybe if y'all just, I hate to be the guy that says buckle up your bootstraps, but maybe if y'all just maybe put on your second pair of pants and got a second pair of jobs, then you would be able to afford the nice things and the Bugattis. Like, I don't have a Bugatti, and I'm not bitching about, hey, we need Bugatti socialism. Why don't Andrew Tate just donate one of his Bugattis to me? Because that would improve my enjoyment. I'm just saying.
Okay. I'm going to back up Gibbs as well, and then we can give you heathens time to respond. So I like in the context of like how I see it is when people say, oh, like you're being selfish. I don't think that it is the desire to restrict the expropriation of somebody else's property for your goals. I don't see as selfish. To me, it would be very similar to like the incel calling the Chad selfish for hogging all the pussy. The reality is, like, you have no right to somebody's body, just like you have no right to somebody's property. And if she wants to fuck him and not you, that's your problem, right? Maybe you can go to the gym.
Right.
Maybe you can go to the gym and work. Maybe you can go. Yeah, no. Leftists are just economic incels, right? They believe they are entitled to something just by virtue of existing. The reality is, you are entitled to nothing. You're not entitled to a woman's body. You're not entitled to a woman's money. You're not entitled to a woman's body or money. If you want either, you have to convince her to give it to you. And there's multiple ways you can do this. You can work for her. You can, in terms of the money, if you want to have sex with her, you can work out and attract her. There's all sorts of things you can do. But at the end of the day, consent requires that people willingly give you their property. But you guys just want to take it. You guys just want to take it for yourself, and also for other people. It's not.
A famous emperor once said,
"That's
"Only
selfish.
privilege is
That's selfish."
Coming from the side that wants to seize the means of reproduction by banning abortion.
Oh my god.
So what I was going to get at with Gibbs and Lactoid at this point, what if some freak accident happened, like a porta potty flew down from an airplane and just cracked you right in the legs? You survived it, but now you can't work. You're not going to be able to work for
you can make it
a year and a
suing
half.
the airline company.
You can make it to where it's not even that crazy. Literally, just like you're at a construction. You're at a construction.
I'm a lawyer. I'll sue them.
Porta potty is getting. Porta potty is getting.
Okay, let's say it's a meteor, a very small meteorite. Cracks you in the
I have
leg.
insurance. Insurance will pay for it.
Insurance will pay for it, and you can sue the federal government for not having enough early radar
You would
systems.
save a lot more money. You would
so
end up saving a lot more money if with that insurance, if it was a collective pool that you're pulling out for the risk.
Or check this out. I could pay for better insurance.
I pay for my insurance contract.
Yeah, I do as well, and I pay for better insurance than that bullshit that the government's going to give me with its weak, decision making, free for all, one for all decisions.
Okay, let's say you get the long COVID. Let's say you get the long COVID.
Because the government insurance trying to get through to get any kind of coverage or approvals is ass.
Yeah,
it's just as bad with private insurance.
Fake news.
Actually, it's worse.
I'm actually going to.
It's just American insurance.
I'm going to back up. Hold on a minute. I'm going to back up Vigilante a little bit here. There's a lot of private insurance that makes it just look horrible.
Yeah, but that's because you're not paying enough.
It doesn't matter if it's private insurance.
Unless you're fucking money back rich boy, you're fucked. No matter what.
I can call my insurance tomorrow and tell them I wanted to become the Oscar Mayer Wiener, and they would fucking make it happen, bro. Like, you're just not paying enough for your insurance.
Whoa, hold on a minute. Let's split hairs here, right? No, okay. Gibbs, own up with me on this one, okay? While we like the free market, we have to acknowledge that there is a difference between competitors on this one. Like you might have a health insurance company here that is the creme de la creme, right? They will approve anything the moment you throw it off. Maybe they charge a higher premium. Maybe they do X, Y, or Z things more. I don't care what it is, but we have to admit that there is a hell of a difference between some of them, which do exist, and some of the others that are literally trying to nickel and dime you every time that you make a claim.
Yeah, but that's the benefit of the free
market.
Here's
the thing: you're the minority, and you're paying out of your ass to be able to have that. Yeah, you're paying out of your ass to be able to have that, to where you can fucking just do anything you want with your health. Versus the health insurance that everybody else has, whether you're on government health insurance or through your job or whatever, like the cheaper health insurance or the free health insurance, it's all fucking shit. You're going to get nickel and dimed, or you're going to get declined on fucking everything.
You're making my point for me. The government insurance, and so what we've seen is total dog shit. And then y'all are making the argument that some private insurance is also total dog shit. Well, here's my argument. Well, guess what? You learn from that, and y'all are saying, "Oh, how hard it is." Let me tell you how hard it is. If I can find a good insurance company. Step one, sit in your air-conditioned house. Step two, scroll online and read a bunch, and then compare programs. And this is basic common sense. And all you have to do, I don't know.
Free time.
Listen, I'm working more hours than you, and I have lots of free time to do this.
Working 3 jobs, what time would I have?
I don't know, man. I'm putting in a lot of hours a week, and I have found enough time to sit down for 2 hours on a Saturday.
What if you have a mental disorder or something like, say, ADHD that makes it hard to keep
I definitely have ADHD. I don't know if you ever had a conversation.
Do we have to go down this hole?
You get medication, though, that helps, right?
Well, I want to give you guys quick good news. Did you guys know that maybe perhaps under some definitions, like a lot of insurance in the U.S. is currently socialized? Do you guys know what a mutual insurance company is?
Fair.
So Geico, for example, Acuity, American Family, right? Some of the biggest names in insurance. Did you know that these companies are entirely owned by their policyholders?
I'm actually
If you buy an insurance policy, you are the part owner, and that company is entirely owned by the people who are insured by them. This is major insurance companies in the U.S.
That's
Your-
like the idea
That's with
of
car
like
insurance and stuff, not with health insurance, but yes.
Well, no, it's also with health insurance. So there's several Blue Cross Blue Shield Association affiliated companies that are also mutual insurance companies.
I think I have no. I don't have Blue Cross.
they definitely exist, and I'm not gonna act like they're bad.
Healthcare Service Corporation is also a mutual insurance company. Massachusetts Mutual Life. You can just look at the
There are a
Wikipedia
few.
list. There's a bunch.
There are a few that are like that in health insurance, but for the most part, it's car insurance company.
And as for what time? Well, guess what? You
My
had this
house
cool
insurance,
thing
one
that
of
you do
these.
called sleep. Just sleep less. Wake
House
up, get some
insurance
coffee. Maybe
God
if you
damn
like
it,
united
Gibbs.
coffee, get some hot tea.
You
sleep
are a
little less.
terrible salesman for
Dude,
this.
okay, I know. Because hold on, because
I'm just saying, quit being a bitch. That's my sales.
what you're currently saying, the whole sleep less thing. I know, you're probably memeing with someone else on the chat there. I just
Try
saw.
harder, bitch.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It is what it is. That's literally what it is. Like,
The whole
You're
sleep
such an
less
asshole.
I've tried. I've been trying to do it so I can get more time in for shit that I want to do, and possibly even make my try and get my channel going a little bit quicker. The fact of the matter is though that eventually I hit a day in the week where I pass out. I don't wake up for a good 10, 12 hours. I've just lost 12 hours of a day.
so I also want to thank you for that.
I'm currently in pain right now because of this bullshit.
So
There's
Razor,
people who can't deal with that shit.
I do want to thank you
And
for
there's
your
some
vote
people
of
who can't get
confidence
laid.
earlier. I mean that's a good point too. But I want to say Razor had a very strong endorsement of Papa Gibbs, and he thought that I had no mental disorders, and I think that is a strong endorsement. If y'all think I have no mental disorders, we're doing real good here.
So I have a question.
Very cool.
So I'm assuming.
He's like, I disavow.
Well, I'm gonna ask Gibbs this. Okay, so you're going into your house. Okay, you see a guy in your kitchen. Okay, he's stealing food from your pantry. You have the right to shoot. You have the right to blow that guy's ass away, right? To shoot him off your property.
He's
right?
gonna be replacing the food in the pantry, one way or the other.
He's going to be placing the food all over the wall next to the pantry. Yeah.
I mean, have you ever had long pig?
Okay.
Oh, fuck.
Let's not project that on the wall. Okay. Anyway, so you would agree. The point is, right? If an able-bodied adult, right, who's reasonably good health, comes into your house, right, and steals your property, you have the right to get rid of them immediately. I think we're in agreement with that. But imagine now that it's a 5-year-old, okay, has snuck into your kitchen and they are eating all the Girl Scout cookies you've bought in your pantry, okay? And you find out,
coming.
and you can tell that it's clear that like this child that has snuck into your pantry to steal the cookies from your pantry, right? Doesn't have a good home, right? He's been hungry for a while. He's got dirt smudged on his face. His shirt is ripped. Do you really think you don't have any obligation at all to try to help that 5-year-old, to help him find his parents, or to give him any type of assistance?
Yeah, I got 7 words for you. Fuck them kids. They getting a whooping. Like, that's what's happening. Like, that's tough titties, bro.
I can't. It's so hard to tell when people are memeing or not.
Plastered on the wall. Okay, so you would shoot the.
How am I supposed to know it's
not like that? I wouldn't shoot the kid. I would not shoot the kid.
You don't know what it is. Maybe
Gibbs might, but I wouldn't.
Okay, but I'm not just. I mean, yeah, we're memeing about shooting the kid, but the point is, right? Like, I can understand like not feeling a sense of responsibility towards somebody who has the ability to work and to provide for themselves, right? And they've just chosen to sneak onto your property to steal your stuff so that they can sustain themselves. But there are going to be people who in society who legitimately cannot provide for themselves. They cannot pick themselves up by their bootstraps. They can't just work hard. You can't go to a 5-year-old, right, and sit them down and say, "Hey, I know you're really hungry today. I know you haven't eaten in a while, but tough titties, I guess you just better
I
work harder
absolutely
in
can
reading
do that.
circle, and then maybe eventually somebody might no, like they're going to be no.
I absolutely can.
Somebody, if you just work really hard, I know you're hungry,
No, you're not.
Bobby. Okay.
No, you're
Like,
not getting it fair. Like that's the thing. Conservatives have no heart for other humans. They're
I don't
selfish.
think that's true. No, that's not
here
true.
we go.
That's not true. I don't think that's true.
That's
Like,
how
I
feel
said
whenever
I
they make
wouldn't kill the
arguments like
kid.
that.
I
Make
said
arguments like that. That's how I think. That's how I feel. I'll fully admit that's my feelings on that.
I would
That's how I
physically
feel.
remove the kid, but I wouldn't kill. Because my mentality is you want to use the minimal force necessary, right? And so for a kid, my life's not really in danger.
Would you give them like some extra cookies, just like, hey?
No, I'm not giving the kid extra cookies, but the kid's. I'm not gonna shoot the kid
and stuff like that. Like you would remove them, but you would like at least put them somewhere safer, right?
I would give the kid the opportunity to mow my lawn in exchange for some cookies. Yes.
He's 5.
So you would
He's 5
enslave
years
the
old.
child.
Okay, 5.
I said, would
perhaps
you take
manufacture shoes.
Would you take
You're
the
into the mines.
opportunity
He's
to?
5
Would you take
years
the
old.
opportunity?
They work in
Would you take
China.
an opportunity
Shoes
to grab
together.
it? To
I
take
fucking
that
love
kid
you
and
both.
put them somewhere safe. Would you use your labor to take the kid somewhere safe?
Look,
No.
I might out of the goodness of my heart, but I shouldn't be legally obligated to. I guess if that's the answer.
I'm not really
Listen,
asking you.
they want to be there.
No, it's not. We're talking about killing
that's-
the kid.
no, that's the
I'm not
thi- no, that's the
saying
thing.
do you
I-
kill
sorry.
or do you remove the kid. What I'm saying is, do you really don't think you have any moral responsibility to helping that kid who is hungry and has snuck into your house to steal your food because he doesn't have any food?
I think it would be I think it'd be a good thing to do so, but I think it'd be a worse wrong to have some coercive entity come punish you for not doing so.
Thank you.
Because ultimately, I'm dealing with my own property, right? And the idea is very much like the incel argument. Like nobody has a right to my body or my property, even if they need it to survive. Which, by the way, most pro-choicers should be agreeing with me on this, right?
IPA, we already had enough libertarians as it is. Why are you here?
I mean,
I know.
You only have one
Oh,
libertarian.
is this a new
Why are
libertarian?
you here? I'm already dealing with enough of this shit.
Look, Fabian's not here
libertarians?
anymore.
There's
I
one
had to
libertarian.
replace him.
Oh my god! That panel had to be a fucking dumpster fire. Anyway,
it was amazing. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm
I
sad
did
I
watch.
couldn't jump. I'm sad I couldn't jump in. I haven't talked to Scott since that one time I was on the roundtable reverie. Fuck.
Okay.
I'm sure he talked to you.
Like here, would it be selfish?
I don't talk to anybody, really.
Would it be selfish for me to oppose a policy that, like, I don't know, paid off student debt, right? Let's say I'm somebody who's paid my own student debt, and there's most student debt we know is held by high. Well, hold on. Most income.
Let him finish.
Most debt we know is held by high income earners, right? So paying off student debt is actually a cash transfer to high income earners in the United States. Am I selfish for saying, well, I would prefer that my money not go to people who make more than me potentially, but perhaps instead I keep it, or maybe I put it, like, I would be okay with it going to Section 8 or food stamps or something, but not college loan forgiveness. Is that selfish of me?
I'm sorry.
Razor?
Time out. Okay.
Sorry, that last bit. I may have missed that last bit.
Razor wants to answer.
Time out.
Go ahead.
Really
IPA.
important. I have something really important here. Okay. Yes, I 100% agree with you that the vast majority of student loan debt is owned by people who is carried by people who make more than $75,000 a year. Right. Just numerical fact. Right. However, there's a really, 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 really key point that you're missing here. Okay. Student loan forgiveness is not paying off their debt. It is not us giving any additional money. It's not us being taxed any additional money. No, the point, don't give me that look. The point that the thing that you're missing is as of 2008 in the Affordable Care Act, the government actually owns all of student loan debt that is not privately held. Okay. So what that means is if I loan, don't give me that face, bro.
Well, of course the government owns the loans that aren't privately held.
Okay, so let me explain this to you, okay? If I loan you $1 and you go and use that dollar to buy a candy bar, whatever the fuck it is, right? Okay? Like, and then I later decide, okay, don't worry about it. Don't pay me back, okay? Nobody owes me that fucking dollar. I decided to forgive that loan to you. The money was already given to you.
Hold on.
I have to fight this.
One at a time.
Wait. This was directed.
The money printer. No.
This is
Stop.
directed
The
at
money
Lactoid.
printer already went burr. Okay.
Oh my
Money
God.
is already taken from our pockets and given to the educational institutions for everyone's tuition, mine included. Okay. I'm almost $54,000 through my loan at this point. Okay. Like it's about another year from paying it off. Okay. Point being, okay, the money was already taken from the taxpayer and given to the to the educational institution. More money doesn't get printed to pay that debt off. The money was already given.
Homie. So no.
Okay, just kidding. You don't owe me anymore. No. Hang on. Even if you were to make the point of, oh well, that money gets paid back to somebody, you're correct. It gets paid back to the Department of Education. At which point you would say you would have to agree the Department of Education is actually fucking useful for us to say that we're robbing it.
Ooh.
No on so many levels that I can't even. Okay.
You broke
Okay, so I'm gonna go through this. I'm gonna go through this.
Wow, you confused Litoy for Scott. That's impressive.
I'm gonna go through this.
That's impressive.
Sure, I'm gonna go through this on multi levels because
racist
for student loan debt. God, I'm a little bit flustered here. So the IRS treats debt forgiveness as a gift because obviously it is. It also, by the way, the IRS treats interest forgiveness as a taxable event as well. And the reason why the IRS treats both of these things as taxable events is because they are a transfer of wealth from one party to another. The transfer of wealth occurs because it's very easy to think about if you think about it in the micro. If I have $5 and I want to figure out how to give you $5, here's $5. Okay, you owe me $5. All right. Well, the net worth of both of us has actually not changed because I've given you $5, but you owe me $5. Okay. The net worth changes between us when I raise up my hands and I say, I forgive the debt. What has essentially just happened is I've just given you $5 for free. Okay. The net worth. I agree with you. Yeah. So if you take out money, if you take out any kind of loan, like your net worth. I'm obviously assuming that you haven't spent it. Now, you can argue that the college degree hopefully is going to be worth more than the debt itself, which, by the way, it is statistically. But if you just, like for the purpose of the hypothetical, you haven't spent it, you're just holding onto the money, your net worth is the same because, yes, you have all this money, but you also owe all this money, right? And so in order to become equalized, you pay it back. Net worth also doesn't change. The only way the net worth changes and it actually becomes a monetary transfer is if I give you money and then you forgive the loan in the first place. Student loan forgiveness is a cash transfer per IRS rules and per common sense, right? Like if the government gives you a bunch of money,
we got to remember that
there are two separate points here. The first part, I agree with you. It is a transfer, and again, to largely people who are making sufficient income. Yes, 100% agree with you. The problem is, you said paying off. The taxpayers are not paying shit. We already paid it.
No.
The problem is it's loaned.
Yeah, the problem is it's loaned, right? And so you can make the argument, well, the government's going to get that money back, and they're not going to return it to the taxpayer like I want them to, which I would agree with you. I wish they would, and maybe that can be an alignment that we can share there. But the reality is like, if the government currently, right, if the government's not going to get that money back from the people it loaned that money to, right, then it's going to find it from somewhere else, aka raising even more taxes or printing more money, thus creating more inflation.
No, don't go there.
I'm absolutely going there.
No, I mean, you can.
That's the negative effect that I'm worried about.
Okay, well, that's not the worst effect to what we already have. It would be one thing if we actually ran surpluses and shit to where we had that money in reserve, but we can't even forgive it. We literally have a deficit that is on top of the loans that we have for that spending.
That's right.
So even if we forgive it, we still have the loan to pay off originally for the federal government.
We are in debt. We are in massive debt for giving free money in the form of forgiving loans to people who are high income earners. That's the common left-wing position in this country.
I want to hit this two sides. Is there when they bring up this question and they're like, "Hey, is this me being unreasonably selfish?" It's selfish. I will say that, but I don't think it's unreasonably so. We know why they're doing this. This is a politically motivated issue. This
They're buying
is
votes.
You're damn right.
it is. It is.
buying
And
votes.
look,
Buying votes.
I get no. This is why democracies work. Is that they go to their constituents and say, "What can I do for you?" This is literally what the Democratic Party
They
is
go
doing
to
for its
the wolves.
constituents.
They go to the
I am-
wolves. What kind of sheep would you like to eat? That's what
I'm
they do.
perfectly. Hey, look.
Asking the Nazis.
This is why I believe in the Republic. This is exactly what it's supposed to do. I don't care how much I disagree with the people doing it. Okay. Second of all, look, there are things that I do think are unreasonably selfish to say. Yes, I'm going to keep my money to prevent that from happening. I am not going to say at all that it is. Excuse me. Let me flip this. It is absolutely unreasonably selfish to keep your money so that children cannot get an education. If they cannot join the ranks of your peers, you are catastrophically fucking everybody around you to save $1. I will not stand for that shit, and I will fight you to the death on that.
You're not fucking them. You're just not providing them.
And the way, very specifically, the way you
they're one and the same at that point.
Like,
dude,
the way
like
you asked that question is very similar. Like how you started it is very similar to that same analogy that always happens, where someone beats cancer, then they come out with the cure for cancer, and they're mad that they cured cancer. Like that's how it feels whenever I hear that shit. It's like you paid it off, but now they're just forgiving it entirely. Oh man, now I'm pissed. But it's like fuck off. Like there are people who couldn't do what you could. You're selfish as shit.
See people being rubbed the wrong way.
You're right. You're right. All the high income earners, who can't pay off their loans. Cry me a river.
I don't care.
How about you use that extra income and instead of buying biscottis and coffee?
I'm principled on this shit.
You're not. I don't think not principled.
I actually am with some
people like me who can well afford to pay off my student loan debt are going to get paid off for free. Okay,
I want to hear what
you're
Razor
just giving me. No, you're literally just saying, "Hey, you don't owe that $1,000 a month for the next year."
That's a big deal.
To a rich person, to a disproportionately rich person.
More money that you can now use to buy the things that you want.
To buy a Bugatti. Yes, good point.
Look, this is why I'm with Lactoid on this issue. Is literally like this is not the people I want to help. Like the upper middle class and the rich people in this country, like they're doing fine. Like they're doing pretty fucking well.
Help, motherfucker.
You're right. So like, let's be real. It is the guys who are working, their 9-to-5s or have the 2 jobs and shit that I'm interested in. Like there's a reason I want the Republicans to be the party of the working class, is because those are the people who need effective help and the Democrats can't get shit done. The problem is we sold out to Trump. If we can fix that, we'll be good. But I digress. The issue here, straight up, is that there are policies that we do need to get that is for the people who are on the bottom part of the totem pole because they're getting absolutely jacked. They had their fucking food prices go up 30% in the last 3 years. It's not helping out, and they're already on their last leg. Like, I do want those people to get some help.
Why'd those food prices go up?
Well, go ahead, Very Clean.
Hey, Leafy, I'm going to leave the room. Can you move right
because
back
of price gouging from people like Walmart, Target, and all that stuff like that.
Oh, that's what happened?
Price gouging, yes.
It wasn't 80% of all the money in circulation right now being printed in the last 4 years.
I already went over it. No. I've already went over this with you.
Gotcha.
No, the answer is no, because
it's literally yes.
No, it's not, because one, it's 40%, and number two,
it's 80% now.
No, it's not.
I'll link you. It is 80% as of now.
I'll bring up USM 0 right now. But on the other side of this, okay, if printing money just equaled inflation, while it makes a very strong argument to say that is the case, we know it's not true. Like, factually no, because back in 2010, we doubled the amount of money that was within circulation as part of like TARP and tariff and all that other shit, right? We didn't see inflation get over 4% the entire run from when all that shit happened up until COVID. There's no way in hell.
Yes, there was deflationary. Hold on, this is not how this works. So yes, there was going to be deflationary effects from other things that were occurring at the time, right? But inflation will catch up with you, right? Because inflation is a very easy supply and demand analysis, right? If you print a fuck ton of money to chase after a stagnant or even a slightly more production of goods, like the money has to, like inflation has to happen. And so I just Googled it. No. In theory, in economic theory, like in widespread accepted economic theory on both the left and the right,
it's
this
not
leads to inflation.
Like, no, literally, it's the exact opposite now. Like, literally, the wide-scale economic theory that is taken is that just monetary dilution
MMT is still fringe. MMT is still fringe. It's still.
I'm not going with this. I'm going with what is it? The credit system theory is actually the one I prescribe to most with currency. The general issue with what we've seen with the currency is that it acts as a commodity to itself now. Whenever we went to full fiat currency, it is grounded in the same rules that like in what is this an inelastic commodity is.
Why do you think that?
Why do I think that? Because we've seen it behave that way multiple times, like particularly during COVID. Remind you, sure, yeah. While we saw our dollar, change in value consistently during COVID, look what happened to every other currency on the planet. Ours was getting stronger while everyone else's was getting weaker, and we still had rampant inflation, which means even with the stronger dollar, the dollar still couldn't keep up with the cost of goods and services. Shit like that is a great example to show that this is not a one-to-one linear ratio, and it never will be.
So I can link you. I'll link you something. It is 80% of the dollars in circulation.
Is it from the Mises Institute? I think I just found it.
It's not from the Mises Institute, but it is 80% since 2020 of the dollars that are in circulation. Now, when it comes to money printing leading to inflation, I'll just leave it in the words of Jerome Powell himself, who admitted that, yes, the policies that was implemented by the U.S. Fed contributed substantially to inflation, because of course they did, because every economic theorist accepts this. Jerome Powell said that mistakes were made when it came to the money printing, specifically as it regards inflation, right? The people who did it are admitting that it caused inflation. And when you look at the inflationary rate of the U.S., it absolutely has something to do, at all-time highs, of course, it has something to do with the fact that we printed a fuck ton of money.
It is a factor, right? No one is saying it's not a factor, which is what you're quoting. It's not the primary factor, which is something that most economists have said for a while now. Like literally the Democratic talking point, unfortunately, is real on this one. You had a mass crash of goods and services on the planet.
Right.
Prices went crazy because of that.
Well, and here's right.
And right now, the reason why bread and stuff is more expensive is again price gouging.
No, it's not. It's
I'm not going with that one.
Price gouging.
It's not price gouging.
Hold on. Let's not redirect this because still Fairy Queen's been waiting to talk.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Queen.
No, I'm gonna pause. I'll come back to my point later because I know you guys are having a back and forth right now.
Yeah, there's a back and forth. I didn't want to shut it down, but all the same.
So there's the commonly accepted theories as to why inflation was so high and is so high. By the way, it actually increased last month, despite the fact that we're past the pandemic, and wages fell. The two reasons are the damage to the international industries, right, and trading system due to the pandemic, and on one side, which led to fewer goods and services being sold. Obviously, now there's more money chasing fewer goods and services, aka more inflation. And then on the converse of that, way more money being printed, about 80% in circulation since the pandemic as well. When you have this is like the perfect storm for inflation, right? You're having both the loss of things that money chases, which leads to inflation, and the increased money, which leads to more money, even more money, chasing a even smaller pool of goods and services. So while you're not incorrect to say that some of the inflation, of course, was caused by things other than monetary policy, no one will deny that. Not even people who are critical of the Fed will deny that. It is also undeniable that a significant chunk of inflation throughout the entire last 4 years has been due to the money printing that the Fed underwent, specifically under Jerome Powell, who has admitted that the money printing led to problems with inflation. So, I mean, when the experts are saying it, when economic theory demands it, and when we see it, when we see inflation being incredibly high, I think it's just impossible to deny it.
Two things.
The
thing.
factor is definitely a factor, but like I said, I'm still going to say a lot of it is because of price gouging. I think with normal inflation, the price would not have gone up as high as it did for a lot of food and commodities.
So do you just don't believe in supply and demand? Is that like the kind of thing you don't believe in?
No. It's that you have multiple. Okay, just to answer Gibbs real quick. The problem is we're thinking about this very linearly, and that's the problem that modern economics is addressing. We're looking at this as one supply and demand graph, as in just the supply and demand of money, but it's separate but correlated with the supply and demand of fruits and vegetables, of metal, of oil, of all these things. And you can have increases in some while having decreases in others, and none of them are one-to-one. This is why we keep having these really weird effects with modern currencies, where this guy's currency over here, you can do the exact same fucking policy with, but the currency implodes, versus you do it over here with the dollar, and it just walks away without even a kick. It's complicated. I wish I could say it's just easy as like the whole dilution principle. You put more money in the system when there's only X amount of wealth. You just diluted the value of that wealth. Makes sense, right? One, the problem is the system consistently enriches itself because we have glorious capitalism. But also, the system is constantly changing. You have literally millions upon trillions of dollars every single day moving throughout the general economic structures of the world. So complicated. Anyway, going back to lactoid, USM 0 all the way up to March of 2020, as the pandemic starts kicking off, February, is 3.5 million US dollars. Actually, this is about $3.5 trillion in circulation. This is how much is actually in float, moving around at any given moment. Today, or at least in February 2024, which is the last numbers I have, it's 5.9 million. We absolutely blew it the fuck up. I'm not going to act like we did. Like the high point was 6.4 trillion.
Wait. Is this just money printed, or is this money in circulation? In
circulation. Like this is USM 0. This is what's actually moving around right now. And I actually sent you the link to it too. Like that's the track. Anyway, like we know that we printed a lot, but the problem is like in the severity of what we did at the height of COVID was less so than what we did under tour perform. Or I'm sorry, what not?
Yeah,
what the hell was the bailouts?
I'm finding contrary sources.
Feel free to send some stuff or that stuff to me. I already posted up the stuff, and then I have no access to the side chat for this. So, like, if you're posting in there, I can't see it.
Hey.
If anyone else wants the USM 0, I can send it off to you. Just let me know.
Send it off to me.
What did you just send me?
Yeah.
So I'll just add Ty to the group chat.
Thank you.
And then we can just post everything in there.
Sure.
How did we get here from?
How did we get here from Nazis?
This is my rebuttal to what they just said. This is their literal argument is summed up in this 30-second video right here. This 30-second video, their literal whole argument of what they think is not causing inflation.
It's gonna be a meme, isn't it?
It is a meme. It's a good meme.
Thought so.
Yeah, so
I'm so not doing that.
It's not even TOS. What do you mean?
I don't know what's going on.
Only a fucking
it's not TOS.
Hey, I'll post it in the group chat.
It's Matt Wieger, infinite amount of cash.
Yeah, he just said we have an infinite amount of cash in the Federal Reserve. Infinite amount of cash.
Yeah,
just denying, and then they're just throwing money, and that's the inflation problem. That's what you're saying. It's not happening.
No, okay. I don't know how to explain this in a quick and simple way. Like the easiest way I think of that I can is that money for inflation does not have a drop off point. It has a threshold. Like you can get away with doing a bunch of retarded shit because of basically the rules of macroeconomics, but there is a point where like the hens come home to roost. We don't know where that line is because it's very clearly different for different currencies. Like the shit that the euro has gotten away with over the last 15 years, like if the dollar did that, the dollar would lose half its value, but the euro still keeps trucking along. The pound did the same thing and lost half its value whenever COVID happened. Like we literally have done like in the field tests of this because sooner or later somebody has to do an economic policy. And currencies just don't behave like the way that they're supposed to if they are just one integrated supply and demand. They're not. They're layered. They're multi-structured. Not only in the general like faith and credit idea that people think that it has, but if you actually look at them as their own commodities, and that if you say that they're just a representation of oil or a representation of just wealth in general, then you actually get a feel for what currency is and what it does. It is a tool, and that tool does have its own price. Sometimes that price doesn't change that much because if you give people money, they're going to fucking use it because it's one of the most useful tools ever. But if you do too much, eventually you will hit that point where that tool is useless.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head. I'm not even really going to push back on this, actually. Like, I think there's even evidence to suggest to some degree you're correct. Like, there's examples in like third world countries where they stack U.S. dollars because the currency holds against whatever they got going on, right? Like in their own like. There's some truth to that, right? Now, I don't necessarily know, and there's even like you could do currency speculation, and that leads to the idea that currency can be its own thing. I don't necessarily agree with that as a concept, but I think you hit the nail on the head at the end there, which is like the whenever you're just throwing more money at the problem you're creating, and this comes back to the supply and demand problem. Okay, if currency is its own unique item that holds its own unique value, once you start diluting that value, now you create a supply and demand problem. Now we're going to end up in a Weimar Republic situation where you're having to use the wheelbarrows to go get a loaf of bread. Like that's
Right.
bad. And so I agree that inflation is multifaceted. But whenever we have policies like, hey, let's do student loan forgiveness at my expense. Let's go give Bob a $20
It's
minimum
not at your
wage.
expense,
Yeah,
bro.
$20 minimum wage. Yes, it is an
Actually, it
expense.
is.
Yeah, it is expensive.
Supply and demand only factors into this
It
so
already
much.
was.
A lot of it.
No, no, no.
$20
It
minimum wage.
still is because the
like,
U.S.
my
government's on the hook for the loan.
Universal health care, all these things are money coming out of my pocket that's going, and then we're going to just create more money, making the currency that I do have less valuable. It's fucking, not only is it theft, it's highway robbery with not even a reach around. It's terrible. If you don't sit here and go, oh, you're the selfish one for not wanting to donate these things, it's like, well, I'm already getting fucked over here, and now you want me to get fucked over here some more and just eat it and say, yeah, it tastes good, Papa. Like, no, I'm sorry. Selfish on y'all's end is the real.
It's not even a supply and demand thing, though. Especially when we talk about the healthcare industry. The healthcare industry is the number one industry where we see price gouging. You can look at that when you look at insulin prices. It takes like $1 to fucking make insulin. Yet insulin in and of itself costs like anywhere from $500 to $1,000. Like talking about health insurance is the prime example of price gouging.
I'm not going to argue that price gouging doesn't happen either because there's bad actors,
That's
farmer.
That's due to poor patent laws.
Farmer bro, bad guy, right? Now how you handle these bad actors I think,
Walmart.
is a whole different, it's a different contention, right? Like point of contention. In my opinion, I don't think government regulations and coming in and hey, let's raise all these prices and waste more. Papa gives us money, giving it to crackheads who don't want to work. I'm going to be fucking upset about that. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, and then turn around and do student forgiveness to these other rich bastards that want to sit here and turn around and turn into what's that fucking dude everybody bitches about that's rich as fuck and then speaks about socialist shit. Either way, they're just turning into the new wave. So yeah, I don't want them to get my money either. So all around, I'm getting reamed, and then y'all are telling me it's selfish that I don't like getting reamed. And that's what's really funny to me about this.
I can sympathize for that a little bit. Lactoid, you do realize there's a difference between M0 and M1,
Well,
right?
yeah, I understand. So there's M1, there's M0, M1, M2, but I'm curious, why are you using M0 instead of M1?
M0 is pure liquidity, right?
Well, no,
that is
M1. Hold on. So both M0 is certain liquidities. M1 includes liquidities such as checkable deposits, which are instantly withdrawable from commercial banks.
Right, there's a reason why they separate, but like M0 is actually what's cash on hand is moving around at any given moment.
No. M0 is certain liquid cash. It excludes.
Oh God, do I have to actually go?
Yes, you can do this because I know I'm right on this. How do I know I'm right? Because I just literally had to look up all this shit. Okay, just now as we've been talking. Like M1 includes checkable deposits, which M0 does not. And checkable deposits, that's from commercial banks that can be withdrawn at any time. That means money that the companies can withdraw at any time from any kind of commercial bank. M1 includes that, M0 doesn't. And so when you look at the M1 graph, it's 80% of money in circulation and money that can be immediately withdrawn from any commercial bank from a checkable deposit. M0, sure, it's not quite 80%, but M1 is 80%. Which, by the way, if we're talking about inflation, come the fuck on. If I can get the money out immediately, that's going to contribute to inflation.
Yeah, so you're not Look, you're not wrong in like what you're saying exactly, because if I remember right, the delineations is M0 is what's actually liquid at ATM, or M1 is anything that can be within 24 hours usually, or at least that's the guidepost for what they may qualify for what is actually functionally M1. M2 is a week, M3 is like a month, and then M4 is a year. And that's why you see like different amounts of money. Like M4 is something like $quadrillion. It's some
that
stupid
probably
shit like
includes like a lot of even non-liquid assets. And I agree with you.
It literally is less liquid each level that you go up, right? The reason why I bring up M0 versus M1 is that M0 is literally what is in liquid right now. M1 is very close to that. I agree with that, but it's also like everything that people are stockpiling. Was the number one thing that people did during COVID? It wasn't spend their money, it was actually save it.
No, I think so. I think you're a little bit wrong. So under the definitions of M1 that I could find, it's immediately withdrawable deposits of commercial checkable deposits of commercial banks. That's included within M1. That's not included within M0. This is like the critical difference. When you look at M1 compared to M0, you see about 80% of the money supply in immediately withdrawable funds through the checkable deposits. In M1, going to be 80% of all the money printed since 2020. When you look at just M0, not including the money that people can go immediately withdraw from checkable deposits at commercial banks, sure, it's not quite going to be 80%.
You do realize we have fractional reserve banking, right? Like all of M1 is not supposed to become like liquid immediately just because it can.
But it's immediately accessible right now for customers to spend on, right? So when we're talking about inflationary,
in theory it is. Yeah, but literally, if it were to happen, it would be a bank run.
So you're not wrong. Well, I don't think it'd be a bank run. I think what would happen is the government would just print more money to meet all the demands, right? Because that's what they said. You couldn't print it quick enough. Well, no, that's what they've said they would do, right? I'm pretty sure there is quotes from the Fed specifically saying like at the government there's infinite money, right? If there's any kind of bank run, literally that's the quote. Like if there's any kind of bank run, like they will meet the cash needs, the currency needs of the withdrawable pot, but. The point here is that people are going to make commercial choices, obviously, off of the money that they have.
Like I was gonna say, isn't this just the mission statement of the FDIC? They're there to actually prevent bank runs, and they have an unlimited budget.
I'm referring specifically to an interview that was done. I think it was with Jerome Powell, where
his exact words are that your ATMs aren't going to run out of cash. That you don't need to run to the banks. There's an infinite amount of money in the Federal Reserve, and then that's when that's why I had the meme thing that I sent Lethe. He just says those three things. That's the literal quote that I sent Lethe that he didn't want to play, and that but then it turns into a song where where they're all throwing money because it's inflation. That's what's going on.
Absolutely.
No, I'm not encouraging that anyone should act like that money is just we can print it forever and nothing will ever happen, right? And if I'm saying anything of that sort, like please somebody help me communicate better because that's not what I'm saying. The problem is that this seems to be a spectrum. On one hand, you got people who are like, you print literally one extra dollar, you fuck the dollar or the value of the dollar. Obviously, that's not true. On the other side of that, it's people think you can print infinite fucking money and it doesn't matter. Also not true. There is a threaded needle here, and I don't know exactly how it works.
The only point of bringing all this up is just printing money. Printing money creates an inflationary pressure. That's what it does, right? In the same way that removing goods and services creates an inflationary pressure. Inflation, like there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Like if you're going to print money to pay for something, there's going to be an inflationary pressure. Inflation is a tax to some extent, right? It's devaluing the money that people hold and thus devaluing the work that they did prior in the same way taxes do, which is more directly just taking a portion of it. And so when we have a mix of increased inflation when we're printing money, or because of the inflationary pressure associated with that, or when we have increased taxes that come from directly taking the money, or increasing the debt, these are like the only three ways in which we can give a bunch of money to college grads to forgive their debt, right? It's got to be one of the three.
Now we're tying back to that, yeah.
Yes, it's got to be one of the three. There's no other way to pay for that.
Look, I'm not pro getting rid of college debts, and I'm about to tag IPA for this one here in just a second. But the long and the short here is that I'm with you and Gibbs on this one. It's not going to meet an end that I want to meet politically, but also I don't believe it's actually a good economic ends, particularly for the United States federal government. Which brings me to IPA. Okay, the problem that you're talking about here is that this is a binary conversation when it needs to be a tertiary conversation. The binary is you loan me $100, you forgave me. There's no problem. But you loaned the $100 from a tertiary actor and you still owe them. That's the issue that I'm bringing up here.
No, that's what you're missing is as of 2008 in the ACA, the government owns all of the non-private student loan debt.
And who do they own that money to?
I love that statement. The government owns all of the non-privately held student loan debt.
Technically speaking, if you want to get down to who...
You defined non-privately held. Who else but if it's non-privately held, it must be the government.
I mean, to be fair, I think
if I
like
remember correctly,
96.
someone said in the chat, 92% of student
Yeah.
loans is owned by the government.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
All
it.
right.
Yeah, that was
Correct.
just it.
So correct, and they're not going to forgive private loans. Like if I take a
No,
loan from
that's
Wells
not.
Fargo they're not going to forgive that.
The government is borrowing money themselves to get that money for your loan. That's the issue that me and Lactoid are agreeing on. If it was just the government had a surplus or like a cash reserve to where they could just like fuck it, we've got the money, we'll let it go. That's one thing. But that the student has to pay back the government so the government can pay back the people that they owe money to. If we weren't doing that, this would not be an issue.
You say that like the government actually pays its debts.
Would definitely help that.
We should. Like this is literally the
Okay,
thing.
we should, but do we?
No, and I think it's going to bite us in the ass really hard. I'm thinking by 2030 we actually have a demand or we have a deflation spiral because of it.
Well, I want to add
I'm
to that.
seriously concerned about it.
I want to add to it.
Billionaires.
Yeah, but hold on. I want to add to what Tiberius said earlier, right? When we were talking about this issue, right? We're talking about all these things, and they're all like leading to like inflation bad, like theft, like of like tax dollars, or et cetera, et cetera. And Tiberius said this earlier, and he says like a multifaceted issue. We can't just focus on the money, you know. And then we went into our like kind of side spin where is it a currency or is it a value thing? And I think we've all kind of met a middle ground on that. But but back to what the other party he said though is it is a multi-level factor. Now he mentioned just now, yeah, the tertiary thing where hey, they owe us money, we all paid in, and then now these guys are getting canceled, their loan forgiveness, now they're not paying back money we owe. That's one thing. But it's not just that. We have a real world example that you can actually use to look at how inflation is affecting different parts of the US, right? And it's what cost of living or standard of living, right? And you can compare, say, Texas and California. $20 in Texas, that goes pretty far, right? I call it one adult dollar, right? Now, if you go to California with one adult dollar, you ain't gonna be able to buy shit. I can't buy McDonald's with $20, right? It's outrageous. It's just expensive. Well, you know, I guess. I mean, either way, my point is, it may be it might be an over exaggerated point, but California's got a much higher standard of living, and we can trace it back to this multifaceted issue that Tiberius alluded to, which is one, all the social welfare programs are being put in place. You're taxing the shit out of people that live there, and then you're seeing rampant inflation as they throw money at these problems with no real solution. And there's all adding up to like runaway inflation and runaway economic problems, as you see, like you're seeing in Cali. And then you compare it to Texas, where they're doing the opposite things, and these cost of living is way lower. You know, and so like whenever you're sitting, you're saying, "Oh, we're gonna just forgive this money and we're not gonna get it back," you're just straight up highway robbing people, and I have a problem with that.
Okay, look, I agree with you and I disagree with you at the same time, so you can parse this part out together. What the difference in standard of living, quote unquote, that we see between like urban centers and the sticks is not a difference in standard of living. It literally is localized inflation. And this is why inflation's a pain in the ass. Is that if we want to treat it like all dollars are actually worth the same, they're literally not. You go a difference in location, that dollar literally changes its value. So if I go in the city, you know, and I'm hanging out at the big, you know, football stadium or whatever the fuck it is, and they're selling beers, how much does that beer cost versus what I can get it at home? Or at least what I can get it at Walmart? It's like 3 times the fucking price. Localized inflation is a very real thing, and it literally is from the micro level to like the sub macro to the ultimate macro level, and that's why you can do stupid shit with it, is that you can put out a shitload of money on the macro level, and on the micro level has a completely different effect.
Yeah, I just disagree. I think the evidence is pretty clear. I mean, like I don't know by any metric when we look at like the cities in California that people think the cities are doing good. Like I don't like the word failed state's coming up a lot. Like it's crazy to me that we're gonna sit here, we're gonna argue this, and we could just look at like the examples of extreme, basically give everybody what they want policies like, hey, these guys only need to work 32 hours a week and get paid $22 an hour or umpteen $1 million an hour for fucking doing wampus, like, and then go, oh, okay, not expect any kind of backlash. And now we're over here
measurement of success is the amount of poop on the street.
Yeah, that's a bad level of success. Like I don't know. Like I mean, I don't care what metric we're going by. If they're making poop maps of you and talking about it on a national stage, you're having a bad time. Like,
I mean, I'll just put it this way: if you want to drop the memes and dreams and get real, there's only one part of the country. No. So, like, here's the real conversation. Why is it that the only part of the country that is economically viable and prosperous is the suburbs? If you go out in the sticks, you're talking about economic and brain drain. Like everywhere that is below 50,000 people is literally dying out economically and population wise. If you go to major urban centers, they're doing the same thing, but in the reverse. It is so expensive to live there that they're now all poverty traps. So what do? Literally everyone's trying to get to the burbs because it's the only place where you're not broke as shit to buy everything, but it's still, a gated community. It's
also
weird.
the most draining on.
I think there might be a selection bias here.
I think there's definite selection
Well,
bias.
because if you're rich, right, maybe it's not like the actual structure of the suburbs.
are also
like,
a drain on cities' funds. By the way,
it could, instead of like
in some ways, yes,
suburbs may not be like the most efficient organization of housing. It could just be that wealthier people want to live in the suburbs because like the suburbs they fucking rule, right? You're kind of close to everything, but you're also kind of not.
Are the majority of the suburbs because of historical white flight?
I'm not going to go there.
You're right. That's why I live in the suburbs, 100%.
No, like that's what I remember the suburbs originally.
Well, aren't you white adjacent or something?
The burbs, no. Like, don't do this. Just don't. The burbs exist because we have cars. Literally, that is why.
True. Well, you say that because you say that other people don't have cars? No, I'm just kidding. Here's the other thing, right? This is what happens when you do the opposite. You get accused of gentrification. So either it's white flight or
do this.
Fuck. We can't have it both ways.
I'm only asking because that's where I remember the origin of the suburbs. Like I'm not saying that's what it is now, but I'm just saying what the origin was.
The burbs exist because of the fact that the United States highly invested in cars and car transportation. We made it to where you can actually have a suburban lifestyle. If you want to drive 30 minutes to work, you totally can fucking do it, and this is the country that supports it. Is that a smart decision? Up to you guys. That's a hyper-political issue. When it comes to like where we are now, like of course me and Lactoid can say it's easy for the rich people to live in the burbs, but it's also better for the poor people to live in the burbs. The issue is if you can afford it, you want to live in the burbs.
But the poor people
because
can't
you have
afford
nice
to live in the
things.
burbs.
I'm aware of that, which is a problem unto itself.
That also
right?
depends on what city you're in. The suburbs here in Cincinnati are actually a lot cheaper.
Oh, for sure.
You're not wrong. Here, the bigger issue here is why is it that if the cities are still supposed to be the playground for the rich and the wealthy, so you can have your penthouse or whatever the fuck else it is, and you still have it to where like the middle class have the suburbs and the poors go wherever the fuck they go, why is it that literally everyone is now trying to get to the same place? That's the part where the calculation seems to be broken to me. Everyone should have at least some spot that they can go to be comfortable. And now it's very clear the rich people don't want to stay where they are, and the poor people don't want to stay where they are. They're all going to the same place now.
The propaganda.
Hey, where are we going?
We're going to the burbs. Everyone is trying to. This is why the average home in the United States is now like $410,000. It's not because they're looking for that home that's in like that urban center that's actually for $80,000 that people forgot 20 years ago that you can buy relatively affordably. It's that they're trying to get a 2,500 square foot home on the burbs of fucking Indianapolis or Columbus, Ohio, or wherever the fuck you may be, because that's
I don't want to hear my neighbors. I don't want to hear my neighbors fucking. That's why
the propaganda worked over the many generations.
Lacto, let's just don't live in an apartment.
And the whole thing of like, the nuclear family and everything. For all the different generations, white picket fence, as you said, the 2,500 square feet, everything. It's literally just propaganda over generations.
You're right. I live in the suburbs because of propaganda. I bought into it and said, yes, I should go live in the suburbs. You're right.
I hear
it's such a cope. Everyone who lives in the suburbs,
everyone loves the
sarcasm of it. But I hear the sarcasm. But like it's not like that's far off from the truth.
Okay,
they're looking for the exit.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Fairy Queen.
It's not far off from the truth that the reason why people want to live in the suburbs is because they've been fed propaganda for years. That's the reason why people want to live in the suburbs.
Generational propaganda, basically.
Can you give me an example of this?
The American dream. Like what he's talking about is the whole idea of the American dream. Is
the Mad Men lifestyle, right?
Do you know those? Fucking God, what were? God, there was a very specific artist and everything. I forget.
Be back.
Like it's the,
Norman Rockwell.
That. The different, yes, I think, yeah, Norman Rockwell, all those different artists' depictions of like the happy family barbecuing, the white picket fence, all that. Like you'll constantly see that type of propaganda, even in games like Fallout. They still have the photos of it. Stuff
So
like
I don't deny that artistry and that certainly cultural representations can influence people to make decisions. But I mean, I think it's kind of a hard sell that because people are just surrounded with movies and drawings and magazines and pictures, that that's the reason why they're willing to buy a house for hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? To like set up shop with their families. That's
it
kind of it's
I'm
like not even I don't
saying
think, and that's a big thing to say, right? Oh,
I'm not saying it's the
you've read
entire
too
thing,
many
but I'm saying
magazines, right? That's
definitely
why you're going to make this huge life decision
it,
on where you want to live with your
definitely
family.
it's definitely a massive driving force, is how for many
Can you
generations.
prove that?
Better homes and gardens.
That's why that's why I keep
There you go,
asking.
Ren.
Like, yeah, right? Like I think it's fine to be critical
Popular
of the
mechanic.
representations if you like, and you could provide. I wouldn't have that critique, but I think it's fine to have a critique of a representation in media. But it's another thing to say that because this is here, this has been represented, that therefore leads to this outcome that actually happens in real life, right? Can you actually provide like a link between those two things?
Probably. I probably would not be able to find an exact link to it. No,
Well, but
causation.
that's
I know correlation is not equal causation.
but that's what I'm saying, right? Like you can show me as many Norman Rockwell paintings as you want, right? What I want to see
I'm
is
saying
okay, this family has seen this Norman Rockwell painting, and then the dad decides, oh, honey, let's go get a house by Meadow Lakes.
Keeping
I
up
saw
with
this
the
beautiful thing in the magazine, right?
There's
Like,
also the thing of the keeping up with the keeping with the Joneses thing that people always did. Oh, they got the bigger, better thing. I want the bigger, better thing.
The keeping up with the Joneses thing
really
is
hard again.
pretty fucking real. That's something that people use in sales all the fucking time. That shit
Yeah,
works
hey,
so goddamn well.
Look at the Joneses. They got this beautiful 2,500 square foot house with
I
this
mean,
beautiful.
yeah, but people wanted to keep up with the Joneses, like even like prior to the Burbs, right? That was just as true in the 20s and the late 19th century. It's literally
it's always been like
it
that.
is the story of the Great Gatsby is keeping up with the Joneses. People have always wanted to do that, right? That doesn't but the suburbs yet the suburbs did not exist, right? They didn't exist at that time.
No, I'm not.
So.
Like I'll go ahead and I'm going to reel back a little bit and apologize in the sense that I am fully admittedly not the best at my wording of shit. Like, so if I say if I do say something bad, I apologize. If I say something bad or a little off kilter, I apologize. I'm glad when people are willing to at least correct me or show me where I fucked up.
No, look, I'm sorry. Sometimes I can get aggressive. I don't mean to be an asshole, but
be mean, Fairy Queen. Do it.
No, okay. I was mean a couple weeks ago. I can't do that again. Okay, so anyway, so a couple
weeks
things.
ago.
Anyway, so I have a question for. It's not really. It's a dumb question, okay? But I'm gonna ask the dumb question because I'd like to know, like, why do we have there was a transition period? We didn't always live in the burbs. What existed before the burbs? Was it the tenements? Like, where did people live? Where are all these?
Was the
American dream shifted? It's basically the American dream shifted. I would say probably after.
It was World War II with the VA.
It's after World War II, and everyone can afford a car.
After the industrial, I was going to say after the massive industrialization.
Yeah,
I mean, it would still be after World War II.
So it's going to be being able to afford a car for sure. That's a major part of it, and it's going to be able to be. You're going to be able to afford a house, right, with the VA loan under the GI Bill, which was after World War II, right? These are going to be the two biggest things that have to do with the spike in home ownership, like single-family home ownership surrounding cities. Prior to this, it was much more common that there'd be like large population groups within cities, and then there'd be massive rural areas that grew food for everybody.
And you also notice that as factories get moved overseas, people also start moving out to the suburbs more often because one of the biggest reasons why people back in the day lived in the cities is because they would just walk to work because they would try to live close to the factory that they worked at.
But before the burbs, you basically have the mansions and penthouses, or you have apartment blocks, which is basically the old tenement housing. You don't have the single issue home. Most of Europe still doesn't have this. Like it's actually an incredibly rare thing in most like urbanized and developed societies. They don't have the suburbs and they never developed it. They never had the space.
Were nursing homes popularized like after World War II as well?
As far as I'm aware, yes. Like
Okay.
one of the most sorry, rant.
Well, no, that's like why I asked the question about the burbs, right? And moving away from the tenements and like into the burbs, right? Is because like a critique like that I have heard, which I think there is some merit to about the nuclear family, is the idea that like it sort of separates, you know, you away from your family. Like typically speaking, you would rely upon the grandparents or aunts or uncles or cousins or people like your like relatives to help with childcare, to help with babysitting, to help with resources. You would live in close proximity to like your extended family, and that was a shift in the and that was like there was a huge article in the Atlantic that talked about it. I can see if I can find it. I'll post it. I'll post it in the chat.
You might love this one. I've talked about this with a friend a couple of times. There's a really strong argument that the nuclear family is actually the most empowering thing to feminism, because it makes the women the equal partner in almost every family unit compared to every other system that we have for families. The woman is part of a subordinary role.
But there are also people who will critique the nuclear family as being extremely anti-feminist. Germaine Greer is an example of someone. And the reason why is because like she criticized the idea of there being one woman to do all of the childcare and all of the housework and to do all of these things when in fact like according at least to her from her perspective that raising children it really should be more of a community effort where you distribute childcare across you, your grandmother, your sister, your sister-in-law, and that's like, so it can go either way.
I would
studies
say
that would suggest that you need at least 7 consistent adults in order to achieve the same effect as 2 parents, like full-time parents.
Just even outside of that though, like okay, so there's a level where like we're even seeing people go back to this. There's numbers with since 2010 indicating this, to where we're starting to see multi-generational households again, because it's just not affordable for family units to actually do the nuclear family anymore, economically speaking, right? The general issue is that it's absolutely better for like raising children, because you can have grandpa or grandma who's like retired or about to retire or working part-time take care of the kids. That's an enormous amount of expenses gone. Everyone can like mutually help out. However, you're not dealing with just a peer-to-peer interaction like in an economic and a politically power basis. Is that you are dealing with mother-in-law or mother, that kind of stuff, and then down. I actually agree with the general notion that just on that one-on-one relationship, the wife is the partner. And what's getting even crazier is that the wife is now becoming this senior partner, especially among millennials.
I actually am curious to ask you, IPA, like the research that you've seen like regarding nuclear family structures as opposed to multi-generational family. And I don't mean like daycare and like hiring a nanny, but I mean like you ask family members to help and to provide childcare and to be involved.
So to expand on that a little bit more, there is and this was something that I read in grad school. It was a meta study of like 72 or 74 some odd other studies, and a large part of it was breaking down what happens to families, the results and outcomes for children of LGBTQ families. But one of the things that they broke down was, okay, what's the difference between just traditional man, woman, child, right? What's the difference between community-raised children? They brought up a lot of Asian cultures and Hispanic cultures that still traditionally do those kinds of things. Obviously they compared to like the results of LGBTQ families, and then they compared that to like divorced or like mixed families, right? And then single parents. So like amongst all of those categories, essentially what they said was 2 consistent parents or 7+ consistent adults resulted in roughly the same outcome in terms of social spending, courts, mental health usage, education levels, income levels, et cetera, et cetera.
The village. Yeah, it takes the village thing.
No. What he's saying is that like a 2-parent household is like the most effective way to organize family structure.
Effective, yes. Is it the only answer? No. Is a community effective? Yes, absolutely. If you do it correctly.
It's less effective than a 2-parent household, though.
Efficient, less efficient.
Well, efficiency is good.
Effective. Yeah, but we're saying
I agree, but if you can get those same results out of a community-raised person, child, whatever the fuck you want to call it, yeah, sure, go for it. As long as you're doing it.
all technicality,
if you could get the
I was community based, so and I'm fine.
If you could get the same thing for $2 as opposed to $7, would you do it?
That's it.
Okay, if you want to be literal about it, no. The community raised children cost the parent less money because you're talking about relying on family members, especially oftentimes like retired family members who don't cost shit.
Is it less money, or is the money just spread out over more people?
The better way to word that is, I want to buy this thing. It's $5. I can spend all $5 of my dollars to buy it. Or I can spend $1 and 4 members of my family can give me $1, and we've all only spent $1, but now we have this thing. Like that's a little bit easy.
I don't think it equalizes out that way. I mean, based on what was just said.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's not exactly 1-to-1 there.
Not
yeah,
exact. No, my analogy is not exact, but it's closer to what we're saying.
I think the 2-parent household, the nuclear family, is like one of the greatest inventions of the Western culture.
It's the most efficient way to do it. Yes.
It's the most efficient way to do that. It lines up really good with the whole like they are the ones that made the child too, right? That's super convenient, and something that should be glorified.
If you can achieve that, if you can achieve the same results in a different way, who the fuck are we to judge?
Because it's more input.
Who cares? As long as you're doing it right.
Okay, as long
as the outcome is the same.
If I could, really. So if I can mine 50 tons of coal with 2 people as opposed to 7 people, it doesn't matter. Hey, 50 tons of coal is 50 tons of coal.
Well, that means you got it done quick. It means you end up getting it done quicker with the mining thing because you get the 50 ton with less people, with more people quicker. That's
why are we talking about nuking families anyways?
I mean, we're talking about the suburbia.
Hey,
so
I got the special Fat Man of Fallout 4, and I just want to send shit. Okay, that's all.
Look, I think like the suburban and rural life of like having the family, it's just like so dumped on when I think a lot of it is coming from people who don't live in the suburb and don't know how fucking awesome it is, how I can play my music as loud as I want in my house. I don't have to worry about listening to like neighbors fucking upstairs. I don't have to worry about smelling shit coming from somebody else, some other unit next to me, because I don't live in a city, and I don't have to worry about walking outside and getting stabbed right away. It's pretty based. I think you guys, I think a lot of people, maybe not you guys, but I think a lot of people really dump on like rural and suburban living, and just like cities. Okay, well, if you want to live in a city, good for you, but fuck that.
It's the most economically efficient with the cities, but yeah.
Well, but also too, like we're using the
it is. Suburbs. Suburbs are
now you care about efficiency. Okay, guys.
No, of course I care about efficiency. I said yes, it's efficiency, but the effectiveness is still the same with 7 versus.
In what way?
Yeah. Wait. Which answer are you? Which question are you?
How is it more efficient?
To?
He's talking about the rural versus.
How is urban living more efficient?
Urban living with I'm saying economically efficient in terms of.
Okay, how is it more economically efficient?
I don't mean to the family. I mean to the overall like. City / government, like the taxpayer money, because suburbs are actually are.
I don't give 2 fucks what's more efficient to the government.
Yeah, I want to pick a fight with Razor on this one.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Like efficient. Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Here, I'll just very quickly. Like, I understand that we're using like the money analogy, like it's $2 versus 7, and like fair, right? But the suburbs is awesome, and it's great to live there if you can afford to go there. If you can afford it, that's the operative question, right? And if you can't afford to live in the suburbs, if you can't, I could see there being a situation where if you're in a family that like maybe makes less money, that maybe it might technically be better like to have like that 2-parent nuclear family structure that has a lot of money that's able to do that. But if you're not able to do that, if you don't have enough money, probably the best option is to have, family members and an extended family community who can help you with your children.
Yeah.
I agree with this. I was going to take issue with like the efficiency conversation, but I think you guys kind of delineated it a little bit. Cities are really good for space management. If you're actually talking about like getting the most utility out of people per like unit of space, cities win. Just absolutely fucking dominate that. If you're talking about like, huh?
Look at China.
Well, just yeah. Anyway, Singapore actually is the best example of this, by the way. Number two, if you're like the suburbs are a little bit weird. Like if you go by the metrics, they're best for comfort. They're the place where people are happiest by a long shot. The sticks are a little bit weird because in theory they really are the best economically speaking. You can live cheaper and easier in the sticks anywhere than anywhere else. The problem is, can you get a job that actually, validates it? And that's where some of the numbers have gone a little scary. California is absolutely no, you can't. But in some places in the Midwest, you absolutely can.
Yeah. You know what else happens though when you can't afford to live in the suburbs? What Papa Gibbs did whenever, he was broke a couple of years ago. He went and got a loan that he paid back, and he went and bought a house in a predominantly minority neighborhood that was being built and gentrified it. That's what I did, because I'm trying to bring economic as a minority. I'm trying to bring more prosperity to my fellow minorities by living in among them. So no flight here, and
Okay.
everybody that's rich moves back to the city. That's the secret.
Well,
Don't you know?
arguably, you moving out would be diversification of whatever community that you moved into. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
One thing I will say that like is annoying about the suburbs, even though like it is awesome and it's nice to live there, is how fucking close everybody is to your house, right? Like, yeah, you're not sharing a wall with anybody, right? But you can't just go to your backyard, right? And like if you have a pool, just like go skinny dipping in your pool and then go back inside, right? You
Welcome
can't
to the
just like
sticks.
Well, if you have a fence,
no, it's
can't you?
ridiculous. Like
You have
it's
a privacy fence?
No,
Yeah, if you have a fence, you can.
fuck
The mayor
that.
of my
Guys,
town
Dude,
is 15
wait.
feet that way.
Oh, you
I
can't have it.
I walk out
family
naked on my back
house.
porch all the time.
I will never forget this. Like my dad, he wanted to install this. I don't even know. It was this geothermal like heating system, right? And he
The
like had
HOA say no?
there was a huge giant pile of dirt like in our front yard, and people would routinely walk like past like this huge pile of like dirt and this huge hole in the ground. They would look at it. They would look up. They would look at the balcony. They would see the telescope outside my brother's window, pointed at and the neighbor's window. They would point at the telescope and then they would walk by. Right? Like
Well,
it's ridiculous. Like
Was your
everybody
brother
is
a
in your
creep?
no, it wasn't a
A little
creep. He was just
concerning.
out. He was just he made a stupid decision and he left like the telescope outside and it was pointed at people. Had some weird
Likely
questions.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's like no.
I
like,
mean,
no,
I live in the city, and I have a backyard, and there ain't nothing on God's green earth gonna stop me from
no,
walking
but
out
like
my
yeah,
backyard naked.
people are
I
in your
want to.
face constantly. They like
Like,
there's
they're gonna get
people
an eyeful
gossip
by
like
looking up from. Yeah, let them gossip.
You guys
can
do
see
an
it all
HOA.
the time.
they get in your
If you-
business.
if you
It's
own a-
passive aggressive. Like it is so annoying. Like you'll have some like little old lady who will come by with her casserole or her cookies. Like, would you like to hang out this
that's
Sunday?
our suburban.
Also,
That's our suburban
They
privilege.
got
Okay,
drones
we are
flying over
so
my
fucking
backyard.
guys do
privileged
HOAs,
because we have nothing better to
like,
fucking do except be a bunch of fucking Karens. Okay, that's our privilege as suburbanites. There.
I'm gonna be real, and I'm gonna.
HOAs are the worst.
I can't do this nicely. I will take the burbs because at least you're not in the apartment where like next door you hear domestic battery all the fucking time. Like
I'll
that.
give you one
That's
worse than
fuck.
that.
What apartments
Like-
have you lived in? What the fuck?
I had one where I had a colic baby
I
next
haven't
door,
had
and this baby was
I'm
crying.
glad you haven't because I definitely
Worse.
have, and it's like you can call the cops so many times before nothing
Never,
happens.
Steven.
The worst I've had is that we had a 3-year-old who happened to be autistic above us, and he liked to stomp around, but I barely ever noticed it.
That situation's rough because, like I said, I had this colic baby
had
next door to
worse.
me, right? And they would be screaming at 4 a.m. like on a Tuesday, and like I had like to be up at like 7 and drive like 2 hours into work, right? Because living in Houston, you're 2 hours.
I lived in the dorms when I was in college. We
But,
had
like, what
people
do
that were playing
Nah,
fucking
this was-
basketball upstairs.
this was
We had
way
people
worse.
cooking shit in
I lived in the
rooms and
dorms in college,
stonking,
and
people smoking next door. Fuck that.
Nah, that was bad, but this is not as bad as the baby. And what do you do though? Like, what am I gonna do? Be like, hey, shut that baby up! Like, I mean, you're not gonna go over there and yell and like knock on him. You know, so then you go
Take
there.
the broom and you smack it on the ceiling.
Yeah, so what I tried, I gave him a bag of like children's melatonin and like a teddy bear. It was like, here's a fucking gift, and see if they got.
Listen. I get it, right? Like I live in an apartment complex, and it does suck. Sometimes I do smell my neighbors smoking a lot of pot downstairs, and I can smell it,
I
seeping
just
through
want
the
the
vents.
more
And it's
room so
disgusting.
I could actually.
And I have heard
terrible.
gunshots outside of my apartment. It does. I mean, there are some bad things that I hear, but the difference is that with the burbs, you might be you bought a mortgage, it's a dream, there's a house, there's a vision of life that's invested because you're going to the burbs. Whereas if you're in a shitty apartment, right? Okay, I'm in a shitty apartment, but I can leave, right? I've got a 12-month lease, I'll be out of here. Yeah, I am paying more than if I had a mortgage, but I can get the fuck out anytime. I don't have to worry about HOA fees. I don't have to worry. And I might hear crazy shit going on next door, right? But I don't have to deal with a bunch of nosy busybodies coming to my doorstep and telling me what I'm not and am not allowed to do in my own backyard, right? So
I just wanted more room.
You end up getting stuck. You're jailed.
For me, if I can
HOAs
get
are
a good
based.
size, if I can get an apartment that lets me get
HOAs are the worst.
enough room.
I'm sorry, if I ever move somewhere in an HOA I'm not ever if I ever move somewhere in an HOA tries to tell me what to do, I'm gonna tell them to get the fuck off my lawn.
That doesn't work because
as I pull out a fucking shotgun.
No, what they'll do, Steve, but what happens is then they'll try to sell your house.
I just want space for my figurines.
The last time I moved 2.5 miles down the road in the same fucking neighborhood because that part of the neighborhood doesn't have an HOA.
Yeah, hottest take. We should replace all zoning laws with just HOAs. That's how we deal with it.
Yeah, that's a hot take.
That is a hot take. A very hot take. I'm definitely no good.
The private solution.
Side of that, I think we should.
Look, this is a great example of why we need government. Okay, exactly why we need government.
Oh, boo-hoo! The yards look good, and I can't put shit in the front lawn. Oh my God.
No, Lactoid. I love you, buddy, but this actually shows how fucking pretentious you are. I've never seen it until now.
Hold on.
Being pro HOA.
Pride my community. Oh my God.
Hold on.
Wait, 1 second. Lactoid. Okay, Lactoid. I about ran for my HOA for president. My HOA, literally just to liquidate it. I almost ran with this with if you elect if you elect me to president of the HOA, I will liquidate the HOA.
That's great. Wait, that's great.
You no longer have to.
But hold on, this is the bigger here y'all missing. This is why Fabian Liberty calls Scott. It calls Lactoid here. Calls him a socialist because he's literally advocating for socialist HOAs. I mean,
HOAs are literally the private answer to zoning.
They are literally the most socialist bullshit I've ever seen.
How is it socialist? It's a private organization.
If I want to put a frog statue out in my front yard, who are they to tell me what's in the best interest?
Who are they? You made a private agreement with an organization to not do that.
What if you owned a house before they had existed? I owned a house.
Then you're exempt.
Well, hold on, wait.
But then they'll do everything in their power to screw you.
I am of the belief. Maybe if this is the way, if this is the way HOAs are done, I would oppose it being done this way.
I'm in a stand your ground state.
I would oppose it being done this way. I think HOAs should have to be voluntarily entered into, right? And so, if you voluntarily into an HOA, then that's fine. But again, it's the private solution to zoning.
No, they already are. They already are technically voluntarily entered into even when you buy a house. But you can say no, but then they'll fuck your entire thing over.
He's literally arguing for the people, by the people. You're literally arguing all socialism points right now. This is the most social thing
I'm arguing for a private organization having requirements for the people who move in.
I agree. It's a private organization thing. It's not
wait. Here, Gibbs. If I'm a landlord and I own an apartment complex, hold on. If I own an apartment complex, can I put rules of conduct for my tenants, or is that socialism?
That's totally different than what we're talking about.
Why is that different?
No, it's not. It's not.
I will tell you why. I will tell you what. One is a private. I know, like was trying to do here. One's a private individual citizen or company that owns the building and he's allowing people to live there. Right. That's much different than an HOA.
Corporations are socialist. Let's go.
No, that's totally different than the HOA thing that he's trying to do, which is a co-op by the people that live in the area that are to force rules upon other people that live in the area.
Wait. So if the HOA hold on. So your problem. Okay, Gibbs. So your problem is that the owners of the HOA are made up of the community, you would be okay with if I owned the HOA and I owned the organization that 50 houses are all part of, then it's okay. Then it's not socialism anymore.
Gibbs, I love you, but what is this take?
Oh, he walked right
That's
into
ridiculous.
What is this take?
Yeah, it's like you're renting it out and throw renting out the thing. Like say I don't know, First Key Homes owns like a neighborhood. Yeah, that's totally different. Totally different. See, because I own my property. There's a difference. So you have a co-op. This is commune socialist bullshit. It's not co-op. There's a very important difference. Very important difference.
There's definitely
You would be closer to
You just hate HOAs. That's all it is.
Queen.
Totally different.
What's Fairy Queen saying?
I'm gonna back up Gibbs a little bit, even though I don't
No.
agree, Gibbs. Like I don't think that like
No.
HOAs are socialism. I don't think that is true. But I empathize, okay? Being angry, okay? All these fucking rules about whether I can
extortion racket.
None of you are principled. You're just convenience minded. That's what it is. Like, if something violates my convenience, it's politically wrong.
No, hold on.
Here's where we all agree. HOAs fucking suck.
I am morally against
socialism
extortion.
when Lifepoint and everyone else is right that it's a private organization.
Listen,
I am the principal one here. Even if it's inconvenient, if I agree to it, it's a private contract.
Fake news.
It's just like you're principled, like you guys are principled up until something inconveniences you, and then you're like, it's socialism. Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you why that's not true. Because one, I have been very open that my one principle is what's best for Papa. So that means that I have been adhering to that principle. I don't know if anybody has been the most principled here. It is me.
So you're being very principled. I understand. Okay, very.
And secondly, you're spouting some socialist bullshit rhetoric. You see that all the other socialists are agreeing with you? That's really all the proof I need.
All the socialists are agreeing with you!
No.
Yes, they are. Look, all the socialists in this panel, do you hate HOAs?
Well, everybody hates HOAs. They're like Nazis.
Everyone except you like
HOAs are
I am alone. I am the only one defending HOAs right now.
You're alone on defending is right now is that Gibbs is being dumb and saying that it's socialism when it's fucking not.
That's like Lactoid is defending HOAs. Hold on. Look, Lactoid, you're cringe because you're defending HOAs. Gibbs is cringe because he's saying that corporations are socialist. Like,
no, I'm saying HOAs are socialist.
I will defend Lactoid's point in that you voluntarily chose to move there and abide by the HOA's rules. He's not wrong.
It's attached. It's a private organization, and the rights and obligations of that are attached by private contract. It's not the government.
Then you shouldn't be able to sell houses in an HOA. You should only be able to rent houses at HOA because if you're selling houses, then you are selling property in which that person has the ability to do whatever they want with that property.
Right.
No, you can attend.
An HOA sale of property is not a true sale of property.
No, yes,
the HOA can take that away. The HOA can take that property away from you if you don't pay dues.
They can sell it out from under you.
Sprout, this is an interesting take, but there's some meat on that
never
bone.
bought a fucking house in an HOA, okay? Because when you buy a house in an HOA, you have the housing contract, and then you also have a separate HOA contract.
Signed the contract. This is like literally. Like you guys talk all the time about the social contract. This is a explicit contract. This is like way more than what you guys think justifies government. Okay, and this is like a explicit. I will agree to mow my lawn every fucking 2 weeks. Okay, and for some people maybe that's too much. Okay.
No. It's
not socialist.
Yeah.
In my personal view, it is akin to extortion.
Yeah, I agree. Socialism is extortion.
But
and this
time out.
I knew it was going to have that. I knew it was going to be that.
Absolutely.
You guys are disagreeing not into an HOA, okay? And I'm with you. Again, I moved 2.5 miles into the same fucking neighborhood to avoid an HOA. Time out. I'm not disagreeing with the principle of what an HOA is. Okay, fuck HOAs. But to Lactoid's point, if you buy a house that is in an HOA, you sign a contract that says, yes, I acknowledge that these are the fucking rules and I agree to abide by them. You choose to do that.
The principle of what an HOA is for is fine. It's the way that they're used, the way that they're executed is what causes them to be more like akin to an extortion racket.
Okay, but again, just don't live there. Like literally,
how's it an extortion racket? Like
not live in one.
There's a problem with the don't live there thing. This comes back to what I like, the kind of individual liberty thing. Sometimes the HOAs form around existing communities, and yeah, you can like choose not to join. But whenever like these people de facto have like 80% of the people in the area in this thing, they're making the rules of the community whether you choose to abide by it or
Yeah.
not, right? And so then
Yep.
they'll like do all sorts of stuff. Like say I want to build something and I'm not in the HOA, and the HOA wants to like come and stop me. They're gonna try to like fight it with the zoning, or they'll do whatever like other stuff. Like they'll park cars out front, and like they'll be like, well, you're not part of it, so you're not like allowed. Like these are all things these are like common tactics, so yeah, you can't, it's not always
And they'll try to sue, like
Yeah,
what
yeah,
they'll
yeah.
try to sue
And
you
most
and all
shareholders,
this shit.
most
There's-
shareholders,
this
well, most shareholders of any company control the decisions of that company.
No, but this is my point. So this is the people for the people that are like live in an area that HOA develops around them, right? That this will happen to those people. So you're having to be forced to live under like an occupying regime, much like many of these other places worldwide, that are complaining for the socialist countries today.
Nobody should ever
What
be
is this
forced. Hold on, nobody
language,
should ever be
bruh?
forced to like. If they have a property that's not part of an HOA, I would agree with you that they should never be compelled to join an HOA.
Yeah, but
okay.
since HOAs
But
are
that's
socialist,
the
they're
problem. That's
inherently
why-
evil, and they
that's why
always
I'm-
need to like force
of the
people out.
HOA.
That's why I'm saying they're akin to an extortion racket, because whether you join or not, they'll still they'll do everything that they fucking can to extort you into.
Like, what can they do?
To signing.
Like park cars in
They'll-
front of your house and then decide not to move them. Allow like a whole bunch of other shit to happen,
Or, like,
stuff like that.
They'll like try to get your
No,
land rezoned, or say like other areas going into
not
the
their
areas
property.
rezoned,
Get it
so you can't,
rezoned, yeah.
Yeah, like so say like you want to
Yeah,
build
I
something.
want to abolish zoning and just replace it with HOA. So if they can't rezone your property, then what are they going to do?
Yeah, then they're gonna have more power. That's good.
How are they going to have more
Yeah,
power?
it's gonna
They
make
have
it
more
worse.
power to rezone your property.
Wait, how are they going to compel me to join an HOA if they can't rezone my house?
Because then it's like a free.
There's a lot of connecting.
They're not going to be rezoning your house if you're not in the HOA. What they're going to do is rezone like an area outside your house, so that like, oh, I need this like pipeline.
Dude, get rid of the road in front of your
They're going to
house.
do like whatever, or like, oh, well, this is like now an electrical grid area where you can't do what like. I mean, these are all things I've seen people deal with in my
Look,
family.
look, if
The amount of horror
we're talking,
stories I've heard from HOAs is fucking
I
massive.
know,
Like,
I've never,
luckily-
no, I think this is all exaggerated. What I
I've
think,
also heard horror stories.
I mean,
People like, no, I'm not signing up for it, but it's a good
Would
house,
you-
and then
would
they
you
got fucked
say-
over until they.
no,
me ask
you-
no,
My
no,
favorite
hold on. This is
stories.
this is 90% people who don't want to mow their lawn, and then there's 10%.
No.
Wait,
No.
yes, and then there's 9%
No.
of people that
Go
want to.
to r slash
there's-
nuclear
hold on,
revenge
hold on,
and
hold on,
search
hold on.
and
And
Whatever
there's
they
9% of people who want to put this massive, ugly radio antenna up
I
on
want
their
my-
roof, okay, and they're not
I
allowed
want
to.
my house.
And then there's and then there's like
this.
there's a sub 1% of people who are like actually perhaps like extorted by people doing illegal methods. But I would punish the people doing illegal methods with like some kind of crime for like infringing upon my property rights or infringing upon me. But a normal HOA of like, this is a contract that you agree to that like is tied to the property. And then if you're going to buy the house, you are going to agree to only sell it to somebody who also signs this contract. This is perfectly consensual. This is a great private sector answer to the government zoning, which is a big government solution that apparently Gibbs is in favor of. Disgusting.
No, I'll tell you what.
I like the last
let me
Well,
picture I
let
was on
Gibbs-
all
hold up,
over
Razor.
from last year, homeowners associations.
So,
it's a,
I wanted
I'll let you in as soon as Gibbs finishes up.
Yeah, before, so I wanted to. Do you think co-ops are like socialist in nature?
I think co-ops that are consensually formed are fine. I don't think they're socialist. I think socialist requires like some kind of like stealing of money, right?
Oh, okay, perfect. All right.
Well, I said I'd let
Yeah,
Razor in, but then after Razor,
What's wrong? What's wrong with a bunch of people just coming together and like voluntarily agreeing to pool their resources and to have equal ownership in a company?
That sounds like a libertarian gives paradise. Because it's just people agreeing to give work.
So
Use
let me tell you why. This is why I. Well, first of all, if you think I'm a libertarian, I'm not. But let me. This comes back
I know
to.
you're
But
not.
Listen to how you speak.
He's against HOAs. He's not a libertarian.
No, he's very much not. No.
Yeah, I'm not a libertarian.
the libertarians don't claim him.
Yeah, I'm not a
The only
libertarian.
time the HOAs have any sort of benefit is when you're talking about like the type of areas that like my friend that I lived with for a while we were homeless has, where their HOA pays for everybody's grasses to be mowed and pays for like True Green to come through and fucking take care of the grass area. That's the only time that HOAs have any fucking sort of use. Any other time it's just extortion.
So
Because I couldn't
Because they're
just
not
pay
doing
for that
anything for you.
myself.
So let me. All right. So anyway, I just to be honest, I'll turn it over here real quick. I just want to say, okay, so you're sitting here and you're talking about all these things, like I, as a conservative, and I thought you were, supposedly one, right? I'm a big fan of individual liberty, and whenever you're talking about, oh, I don't want a big radio tower built in my backyard. I'm saying if Bob next door wants to build the International Space Station on a rocket and launch it, as long as it doesn't affect my property, sounds good to me.
I promise it will affect your property.
Listen, if I want to put up a Patriot missile launcher in my backyard, it's
that will also affect your property.
I'm just saying, like these are things I don't like understand how you can sit here and
Really?
go.
What if I wanted to dump cadmium into your water supply? Is that okay?
I mean,
any problem with that?
I mean, I guess I'd have to see. The good thing for me is I have my own water purification.
Okay, yeah. The onus is on you for just purifying the water, right? If you don't want to purify the water, then you basically consented to drinking cadmium. Yeah, fair enough.
Exactly. I'm saying that's.
Damn.
I don't.
Okay, Fairy Queen, do your thing.
I don't know why you're surprised.
Last thing on this stuff. This is all making me very much not wanting to live in the burbs. I think the ideal place really is like a cabin that's like in the woods, that's like down the road, that's heavily isolated from all other people, okay? This is what you want, okay? Far away from all this bullshit. But anyway.
It's very libertarian of you. I like it.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I agree.
Anyway.
That's the
all right.
again the. Yeah,
Sounds more like the
is big. That's big for me. Is I can agree with like personal choice on for people. That's Fairy's particular choice. They want the cabin out somewhere, but they of course still get into towns whenever they need be. Some people want to live in the burbs, like IPA, and is a nice little around a lot of people. Some people like me who I love living in the city. I can leave my apartment whenever I want. I just want a bigger apartment so I have more room for my shit. But that makes it easier for me to walk out of my apartment whenever I wish, and like 10 steps, I'm at a convenience store, grab myself a new Dr. Pepper, another Dr. Pepper, or some hot links or something, and then go back and cook. Like, I overall just want people to have the ability to have whatever housing they wish to have, and I have no clue how we can get there. But I'm so willing to work on getting that mixture into our economy as best as possible. I don't know how though, and I wish I like getting on these because I get more information, makes me stronger, makes me smarter.
Right now, we're working in a time with more working homeless than we ever have throughout American history. So I'm going to say it's not working out so well.
Not right now. I want it to get better. A lot of the problem is unfortunately the rising cost of housing. I can't say it's due to inflation alone. I still think a lot of it has to do with price gouging, even on the housing market.
Mm.
What do you think price gouging is? Demand. This isn't Canada, okay? Like in Canada, yes, there's an artificial supply and demand issue because there's a whole different story behind that. I'm not going to go on the tangent, but like it's different, right? In Canada, yes, that would be true. Here in America, less so, significantly.
Yeah,
less
the housing market here in America isn't price gouging.
Because there are a fuck ton of empty homes that are not being used right now, but they're owned by like big corporations, and there's no one's allowed to use them.
It's artificially adjusted supply and demand because you got companies just buying up a bunch of fucking empty homes and shit. It's not price gouging. It's them. It's companies like BlackRock buying up a bunch of houses.
Yeah, it's I just know it's big corporations buying basically everything and then saying "fuck you, you're not allowed to have it unless you pay me this amount every month."
See, but it's okay when they set rules. It's fine when they set rules, though. That's totally different.
What's the difference?
So
what separates this? So why is I've heard the term price gouging. Like, what's
Sorry, I know bad words.
What would you? Well, I'm just curious because like price gouging like implies some kind of nefarious intent. Like, what's the difference between price gouging and just like selling my property to the highest bidder?
Price gouging be something would be the way that I forgot his name. He's like he was a big name for a while, but I've forgotten because I'm bad with names. The guy who did like 1,000, like a close to 3,000% increase on insulin. That was definitely price gouging.
I don't necessarily think you could do price gouging with a home unless it's a newly built home.
It wasn't insulin. You're talking about it was a cancer medication, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're talking about Daraprim, right?
Yeah, Martin Shkreli, is that
Martin
who we're talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
But
That
also,
went to
again,
jail. That was
again, that gets into a separate issue of patent laws.
Yeah.
Right. So when we're talking about housing supply, which obviously is not going to be constrained by patent laws, like the best way, I think both left-wing and right-wing economists actually agree on this. Like building new housing is really the only way to address housing affordability.
I'd be cool if we also just took a large majority of the houses that are not being used right now and put them into the market for families to buy at a lower price.
How are you going to put them in the market?
Wait, what?
Take them.
I mean,
like because they're not being
take them.
They're not being used for anything.
Okay, hold on.
Just take them. Just
he's not talking.
Single asset forfeiture. It's fine.
You know who can do that? You know who can do that? HOAs.
Gigantic multi-billion-dollar companies that are not using
time out. Let me bridge that gap. Okay, let me square that circle for you. Okay, yes, me, the libertarian guy, is advocating for some sort of regulation upon corporations. Okay, yes, I'm gonna say it. Okay, there should be a limit on how many unoccupied homes that you're allowed to own. I'm not saying you can't own them, but they need to be occupied to some degree or another. And yes, there needs to be some leniency on that because yes, renters come and go. I get that. Okay, but yes, you can't have 27 unoccupied properties. Okay, that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
why not?
Republican Party.
I mean, that's nicer. That's a lot nicer than what I was going to say, which is just ban corporations from buying housing.
Okay, first of all, a couple things. Hold on, wait. Home ownership. Look at home ownership rates right now.
If corporations cannot own housing, then how do all the people with the shit credit gonna buy a home? How are they gonna we're just gonna give it to them?
Yeah, the levels of like corporate owned housing is dramatically overestimated. You can look up right now like home ownership rates among like private citizens, like private families, has not like substantially dropped since like the 50s, right? Like
people who would not otherwise qualify for a mortgage would get fucked if you did that.
So there are like home ownership. We're not seeing a crisis in home ownership right now. When we're talking about vacant home, like homes sitting vacant, that number is a little bit twisted, right? Because on any given year, you could say that like 9 to 10% of the homes are sitting vacant, but that it's not the same homes that are vacant the next year because sometimes houses sit vacant as they await a buyer, as they await a renter, as they're being renovated, as they're being cleaned. There is a direct financial interest in not just buying a house and letting it sit, because while it's sitting, you're paying property taxes on that, you're paying potential utility costs on that, you're going to have to pay for maintenance and upkeep, and all that expense is racking up, and you're not getting anything out of it. You're not getting like the money from a renter. There is a direct financial incentive to put a renter into a house that you own. So, like, what's the problem here? What are we trying to solve?
Again, simple problem or simple solution. You just limit the number, whether it's sheer number or percentage of properties that you own that can't be unoccupied for X number of time.
But why?
Simple.
Why? If I want to build a 15
so that you cannot create an artificial scarcity, which is actually happening in Canada right now.
It's happening here in the U.S. too.
Legitimate problem in Canada.
It's happening here in the U.S. too. There's 15.1 million vacant homes currently in the United States.
Out of how many? It's about 9 to 10%, right? At any given time. But of course,
it's same 10%.
Yeah, 9 to 10%, right? And that percent, like those homes are going. It's not the same homes year per year. Like that shifts over time, because obviously homes are cycling. It's a market,
but
right?
It's still enough that because last time I talked about this, I looked it up. It's still literally enough to give every single homeless person in this country a house.
Okay, how many of those homeless people are eligible and qualified to buy a home?
How many are willing to work? How many do you think are willing to work in order to?
None, but it's literally just a comparison number. I'm not saying.
Okay. So how do we? So if none of the homeless people are qualified to buy the 9% vacant homes, what's the problem?
So
How do we fill those homes?
Would you want to leave
Break
them on
them
the
down into
streets where they
affordable
can't?
housing?
Would you want to leave them on the street to where they
That isn't
can't
the solution.
where they can't
No,
get
that's not
shower,
what I said. I'm
they
asking
can't
you a
get place to
question.
sleep? I don't know. This connects to
It's a
my
rhetorical
answer.
answer.
Basically. So basically, like, because if they can't like get dressed somewhere, if they can't keep their shit safe, if they can't get a shower, if they can't actually take care of themselves, they're just stuck on the street the entire time. They're not going to be able to get the money that they need to buy these homes. So a large issue which is why I always hate that fucking pull yourself by the bootstraps shit. With what fucking boots if they don't have the ability to get the boots like that?
So
Like they need the homes or some place to stay to keep their shit safe, to build up the wealth, to then be eligible to afford the loans, to then get the homes, so that they getting jobs and getting jobs and everything. It's
Okay, so
So the problem is this is a multifaceted.
I understand that, and there's an argument to be made about minimalistic housing that puts a roof over those people's homes and gives them a place to shower and keep their clothes and shit like that. I get that. There's an argument to be made there, but we're not arguing about that, right? Right. What we're talking about is 9% of homes, and like, what the fuck do we do with the 3,200 square foot home out in the fucking suburbs that's sitting vacant? How does that help those people?
It could become a halfway house like that.
Well,
like a good amount of people. That at least for that home. But there are
It's not even
also
that.
huh?
It's not even that. It's the fact of like the problem comes down to is there's limited amounts of like apartment housing, and it's harder to put it's harder for almost people to get into apartments if the people that are currently living in apartments are perpetually stuck in living in apartments. So the people that are like mid to lower income people not being able to afford housing and getting out of perpetually living in apartments creates an issue to where you can no longer it makes it harder for people to go from homeless to living in apartments.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Again, that's why I said there's an
also
argument to be made about making it living in a very minimalistic way where it's like just room and board.
No,
Here's your
I'm saying
bedroom
we
with
need to make it
your closet and a bathroom. No,
So
I'm saying we need to make buying a house more affordable, so we don't have that issue.
And that as well. But there's also the minimalistic room and board that you're talking about. It can be done with like certain type of apartments because there are actually built.
This
there
is
are actually
you.
buildings.
This is you.
This is you.
And your socialism.
No, so hold on. So I was talking about HOAs, and then you jumped my shit. But they're talking about taking people's houses, and you're just
Which
like,
what HOAs do? Which HOAs do?
They don't do that. It's an agreed upon sale.
With the like it's a minimalistic room and board and everything. I can't remember which building. But there are skyscrapers right now that can easily be made into that are basically just empty buildings. There's no reason for them to be.
I just want you to know, ladies and gentlemen,
you're talking about taking someone's property. I'm suggesting that we build something. I'm not talking about taking anyone's property.
You are making
but it's right there. We could just take it, man. We could just
you are literally
take it.
like clips of like
used. There's no reason for it. Literally nothing.
All the toothpaste at the store. It's not being used right now. We can just go take it, man.
Yeah, it's all right.
Nothing being done with this building.
You know what percentage of toothpaste is currently not being used? We can just use it.
Oh my god.
There's so much toothpaste at the store not being used. It's just sitting there behind the shelf.
You don't.
Listen, whenever Republicans, I talk to my fellow Republicans in the real life, and they're going to say, "Oh, the left doesn't want these things." You're lying. I'm going to show them clips of this last like 5 minutes and just be like, "Everything I told you is true."
Do you understand how annoying it is? I'm talking about buildings that are empty and are never being used ever. And they can at least the government could easily pay the fucking people who own them currently. Say, hey, you're not using this for anything. Here's some money.
Yeah, because that's what happens with eminent domain.
You're nice.
Exactly. That's eminent domain, and they pay you pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, that's real terrible. I mean, like,
oh my god. Again, they were never going to be used.
What do you mean they're never going to be used?
I don't give two fucks if they're used. That's someone's private property, and unless you pay them market value and they agree to sell it,
wait. What do you mean they're tax write? What do you mean by that? They're tax write-off property.
Tax break kind of shit.
No, let me.
No,
What if I?
fuck it,
What if? Hold on.
No. Hold on. I want to hear that. So when you own properties, you actually pay more taxes on them because you pay property taxes. So what do you mean?
There's also the whole issue of possible money laundering for these type of gigantic empty buildings. Like I'm talking about, there are skyscrapers that are just empty.
Yes.
No, hold on. Let me just ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, right?
Does this outweigh the property taxes that are paid on vacant properties?
I want to flesh out their logic here. What exactly is use, right? So say I, as a business owner, right, like I own an exotic leather customs company.
It's an let me explain.
And I buy a
building with no floors.
Vacant.
Okay,
but it's a gigantic, huge fucking building. It has nothing in it now.
So I buy like, I don't know, an abandoned or like an old apartment complex, right? And I'm just like, oh, I'm going to turn it into a storage facility. Right, and I go in there, and I never.
Really cool.
Hold on, right, but hold on, and I never actually end up having any storage going in there. But now I have this vacant apartment complex. Is that potential that I might need it here in the future to use it not enough of a use, or like, are you saying, oh, I'm just being greedy, like by like owning this property? And then whenever you start, if you aren't saying that. I'm not being greedy, then how do you differentiate between like someone like me doing that and like Bob over here who's like owned like a warehouse for 20 years and never built anything and never put anything in there? You know, like what's the differentiating like factor here?
Good question.
And on top of that, in most states, to Gibbs' example, if you buy a house and you don't actually use it, no one's living there, it's not considered homesteading. You actually pay more taxes on it. It's more of a detriment in that sense.
Yeah, I just don't know how to determine use. Is kind of
and you pay maintenance, and you pay. I mean, it's just potential utilities.
Hippity hoppy is now my property. Good one.
That's why I giggled.
That's what you encourage with all your socialism. You encourage now to take your houses.
You are in favor of government zoning as opposed to HOAs.
So glad that everybody stopped.
I don't like either one. I think we should get better abolish both.
I forget. Fuck.
So hold on, wait. We abolish both. So okay. I can put like a nuclear reactor next to your house.
Let's do it. I guess we got some strong swimmers. I mean, you know, I mean, yeah. There's that worst case scenario. Hopefully, in that scenario, I have enough money to move.
Gibbs. I'll say this. Your world would be very fun for about 15 minutes. I'll accept that.
I think it would be good. I think
it's funny how the guy who doesn't identify as a libertarian actually wants to live in Ancapistan.
No.
Wait, yeah, you just described Ancap. No zoning and no HOAs. That is Ancapistan if I've ever heard it. Nuclear facilities next to your house? Come on,
Hold on. Sure. You know, that's true. I mean, my perfect world may have some elements of it in there.
A regulation?
But there might be a few regulations.
A few government regulations. Just a few, right?
Like having a big enough army to go take other people's shit. That's going to be number one. Like, you know, that's going to be important.
Like their houses?
Yeah, your houses.
You can have your perfect world, okay, so long as you create it with the veil of ignorance.
Right. Exactly.
And the problem
you don't know where you're going to sit in society.
Yeah, the problem is, of course, Gibbs will lift the veil and go, I want to put myself here, and then put it back on, like as if he did.
That's what we all do. Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm. Except I'm openly admitting that I'm going to do that.
You're openly admitting you're selfish.
No, because I want everybody to benefit from this society. Everybody's going to benefit to their max.
They wouldn't. No, they wouldn't.
There
would be a lot more extortion if there were no regulations.
Nah, you'll be all right.
You say that.
So yeah, ultimately,
are you sure Gibbs isn't an anarcho-capitalist?
I'm pretty sure he is.
Based on everything he said.
Nah, see, Fabian's an anarcho-capitalist. I mean, him differ on a lot of economic things. And political
but you're
theory.
close. But you have the same.
You're close enough.
This is why I think you guys are convenience-tarians, which is just like you really are principled, and then like, oh fuck, I got to pay my HOA fee. This is oppression. This is.
Then we're back to the HOA. Let's go.
It is oppression. It is oppression by the socialist co-op that is formed.
You volunteered to live there, bro.
People living in there. No, what if
you
I
signed
did
a contract?
No. Do you
If
think
you
I
didn't
would choose to
voluntarily
live in
live
there?
there,
Listen,
move.
I've never once signed a
Just
contract with any
move.
place in the HOA.
Look,
Yeah,
I tell. Hold on. My prescription.
I hate that argument.
No,
But
no, my
It's
prescription.
a
My
fucking
prescription for
lame
people
argument.
who hate HOAs and for people who are like, oh my god, the housing, right? Just move. Just
well,
move.
this is why.
The
This
housing's
is
too
why you're.
expensive. You can
This
move.
is why
If you don't
people
like the
hate
HOA,
that
just move.
argument because there are a lot of people who can't
Hold on.
because of disabilities or money
No,
issues. But
fuck
at the
that
same
pussy
time,
answer. Listen to me. This is the real answer. This is why people
Oh no,
think
they
you're.
Buy a
don't. You
house
gotta
and never
remember,
move.
This is,
they don't
hold
like
on. This is why
that.
people think you're a
They don't
socialist
care.
Canadian. Here in Texas, we don't move for shit. I don't know if you heard about the Battle of Gonzales. You know, we said come and take it. I never heard about the Alamo. Kind of like
What
the
was that
Mama
war
Leaving
over?
Better.
Hey, what
I
was that
mean,
war over?
Texas independence.
What specifically? What specific economic policy was that war over?
The
Taking
gun.
people's shit.
It's something. So, what was the Mexican perspective on slavery compared to the Texas perspective on slavery? What was that all about?
Listen, you know that may have been a mitigating factor.
A mitigating.
However, the primary factor was the guns. Was the gun.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Hold on. Ranching and slavery is that. Listen,
it
Texas
wasn't.
joined the slave states with the least amount of slaves. Ranching just doesn't.
Oh, is that the bragging point?
No, yeah, it is because you know
Doesn't
we figured out pretty
matter.
quickly
They
that you
joined the
can't have
slave
slaves
trade.
ranching because you give somebody a horse, they're gone.
Anyway, Gibbs, when are you guys
We
gonna
were
secede?
10%
Guys,
less
we had
evil
the
than the rest of the
fewest
Confederacy,
Nazis, okay? Like,
You know.
I'm the West
Anyway,
Texas
Gibbs, when are
land
you
in
guys
El
gonna
Paso.
secede?
I'm
You know,
saying.
I mean, when will we succeed? I don't know. Whenever it does happen, we're gonna do it successfully.
No, you're not.
I mean,
You never will.
If the government's smart, we'll just let you guys fucking do it and die.
Listen,
you know already got resources.
Yeah, the moment you do, we
let
take
them
it back
secede.
immediately.
Let
by
California
force.
secede.
I got an argument for you.
Adios.
If California does, we'd be
Bye,
able
good to
to.
see you.
If California,
Bye,
I gotta
IPA.
bounce
Yep,
as well.
IPA.
Catch you guys later.
Hey, great having you guys. So yeah, I should probably get to rating out soon.
Yeah.
And if you want to give yourself an outro, Lactoid, by all means.
Yeah, you can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you, all of you, for talking to me, and thank you, Kai, for inviting me.
Thank you for coming on. Always a blast. And everybody, HOAs are amazing.
No, they suck ass.
HOA is the devil, but if you don't want to live one, just don't live with one.
Run for
Simple as
president
that.
of your HOA and liquidate it.
Let me hit y'all with one before while he's rating out
Literally,
here.
I moved out of one because I could.
I mean, you know damn well where I'm rating.
Hopefully me. Yes. But no, I was going to say here, I got one for you. All right. So this one always cracks me up. I always hear from the left how big and bad our military is and how Texas is a joke because we couldn't secede because the F-35s and the B-52.
All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode of Lactoid TV. All of you who gave bits and subs, thank you so much. For all of you who followed, thank you so much. We're going to be rating on out now. Leafy Water Kai said that he's going to be rating on out soon too. But we're going to go ahead and rate on out into him, and then he's probably going to rate on out into Gibbs. So you guys are going to be thrown around like a tennis ball. So anyway, catch you guys later.